My bosses are constantly stealing from the store we work at, leaving me incredibly frustrated and very annoyed that I have to deal with them. But eventually, karma was on my side, as I finally got the evidence I needed to get revenge on these jerks by getting them fired once and for all. And I'm honestly so happy I did it because these guys absolutely deserved it. Here's how it happened. So I was a manager at a small chain grocery store several years ago. It was a crappy job in the bad part of town, and I was working 50 plus hours a week on salary, so no overtime, and I was attending college on top of that. Needless to say, I was super tired. Our store had 3 managers. The store manager, who we will call Dylan, the assistant store manager, who I will call Jim, and a third level manager, who would be me in this situation. Now, Dylan was an okay guy, sometimes a jerk, but usually easy to get along with, and a thief, even though I could not prove it. He also scheduled me to work nights like 3 days a week, and he wouldn't budge on that. So I had to deal with the crappy lunatic customers that only came in at night all the time. It was extremely frustrating, and it wore down greatly on my sanity. Now, Jim was a complete moron with room temperature IQ. He did a halfway job, thought he was some kind of alpha because he drove a motorcycle sometimes, and he was also a thief, even though I could also not prove this in any way. When I would come into work in the evening after class, employees would always vent to me about how Jim was bossing them around while he sat on his butt all day. And unfortunately, there was not a lot I could do except for like offer a listening ear and laugh and just cut up with them while finishing our shifts. I was usually the only manager working in the evenings, but Jim and I had scheduled one night to work together on a project that needed both of us to be there. And this was probably rearranging shelves or new product placement or something like that. We were getting ready to leave and I was going to take my cash drawer to the back to count it, but it's then that Jim asked me to wait a minute because he needed to buy some packaged or butchered meat for dinner. And of course, this is no problem. He then came back with a 5-pound package of beef with a ridiculously low price, like $3 or something like that. And it had a sticker with a correct but different item description we didn't use. For reference, I ran the cash registers a lot, and I was very familiar with our products. Well, I didn't say a word and I just rang him up. When we walked away, I reprinted a copy of his receipt and I stuck it in my pocket and we just closed up for the night. Now, I was scheduled to open the store the next day on Saturday morning, so when I arrived, I walked to the butcher room to investigate. I then found a plastic wrapper from that package of beef with the original price tag in the trash can, so I went ahead and I grabbed it. I also found that the pricing scale that prints the price stickers had that wrong label still selected, and he had manually keyed in a dramatically lower price per pound, so I grabbed one of those stickers as well. Then I walked to the DVR in the manager's office and I wrote down the timestamps of the footage where Jim took the meat off the shelf into the butcher room and walked out to my register where he bought it. I then stashed the evidence in my locker until Dylan came in at around noon, and that's when I showed him the evidence. He then got in touch with our district manager, who we will call Rocky, and this is where Rocky called Jim the next day and asked him to come to the store. After a short behind closed doors meeting, Jim was fired with cause, so he had no unemployment benefits. Shortly afterwards, I was promoted to assistant store manager, meaning that justice was served and nobody missed that loser. Well, a few months later, we got a piece of mail from St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It was a fundraiser package to collect quarters for leukemia research. Now, I thought it was a great idea, so I had the cashiers ask for 25-cent donations to put in the little cardboard stands they sent us. After the program ended, we collected about $250 in donations. I kept the donations in the safe, and the instructions in the fundraiser said Western Union was the way to send the donation in, and that was down the road from us, so it was easiest. Dylan took the money to Western Union, and when he returned, I asked him for a receipt, but it's here that he said he didn't get one. Now, when he said that, I was suspicious. A few weeks later, we got a letter in the mail from St. Jude, and it was a thank you letter for our generous donation of $50. That jerk stole money that could have gone to saving a kid's life. And trust me when I say this, I was raging inside. Roughly a year later, Dylan and I were working on another project at night. I had finished cleaning the floors and noticed that I had not seen him for a while. I was looking for him to ask if he was ready to leave, and I heard the door to the dairy cooler open, so I figured he's stocking some milk or something like that. The door was only slightly open, so when I opened the door, I walked in to talk to him and I saw him hovering over a shopping cart filled with groceries that he was putting into shopping bags. Now, when he saw me, he was startled and started talking to me about some random thing as he hurried out of the cooler. I acted like nothing happened and we closed up the store and just went home. Well, Dylan was scheduled to open the store the next day, and when I arrived at around noon, he went home shortly afterwards. But when I went to the dairy cooler, the shopping cart was gone. I pulled the DVR footage and I saw him arrive at work about an hour early and park in his truck at the front door, which was really unusual. He then rolled his shopping cart out of the cooler and over to his truck where he loaded all of the groceries. He then locked the doors and drove off and came back when he normally would to open the store. Since all the items were in bags, you couldn't see them, so technically I couldn't prove he didn't buy them. That is, unless I watched a crap ton of footage and followed him around the store on the DVR are, but there was a glimmer of hope. One thing he stole was a jumbo pack of paper towels, so it would not fit in a bag. This particular brand of paper towel was also overpriced, so customers had not bought a single one, and there was only one pack missing from the display. I needed just a little bit more evidence though. I then got the barcode number from the paper towels, and I ran a report on the computer for any transactions the entire week that contained that number, but it showed that no results had ever been found. And this is exactly what I need. This was perfect. I printed that and I wrote down the DVR timestamps. Well, by coincidence, our area manager, who we will call Rod, who also worked underneath Rocky, happened to show up that same day. I then showed Rod the evidence, and you can probably guess what happened after that. And no, Dylan didn't get his unemployment benefits either. Rocky then hired someone to replace Dylan instead of promoting me, but shortly before then, I had finished my degree, so I started a real career a few months later, and I got out of that crap hole store once and for all. Oh man, I honestly would lose my mind if I was dealing with a bunch of thieves every day, especially people who are supposed to be my manager. It's like, dude, are you supposed to be setting the example here? Like showing people that no, we don't steal around here. I'm gonna be a good manager and do my job, etc. Like the first guy was changing prices and the other one just straight up stole groceries. Like both of them are idiots. How do they not know that there's cameras everywhere? There's no blind spots you can take advantage of. Like this is some seriously stupid criminal behavior. These guys absolutely deserve to get fired. So to the original poster, good for you for getting these people in trouble, because dealing with thieves like this on a daily basis would drive me absolutely insane. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My stepdad literally canceled my college fund and instead gave it to his biological son, forcing me to now go to community college instead and work 2 jobs just to pay for everything. Things are so bad that this guy literally tried to claim that I broke up the family, even though we both know he's the one that did that. Here's what's happening. Okay, I'm 19 years old, and when my mom married my stepdad 7 years ago, he legally adopted me. He made a big show of saying that I was his daughter too, that he loved me like his own and all this other garbage. And when I was 13 years old, they told me there was a college fund for me started by my mom and added to over time by the both of them. Well, 2 months before my high school graduation, I found out that the fund was gone. It turns out my stepdad emptied the account without my mom knowing and gave the entire thing to his biological son for a private sports academy. When I confronted him, he said, "Oh, he needs it more. He has a future. You'll figure it out." Well, my mom was furious and filed for divorce. She opened a fraud case, but it's still unresolved. I'm going to community college right now, working 2 jobs and paying for it out of pocket. I haven't spoken to him ever since then, and he occasionally sends emails telling me that I broke the family. But honestly, no dude, this is something that you did all by yourself, because trust me, I had nothing to do with that. Oh man, I am so sorry you had to deal with that. That is so unfair. Imagine having a stepdad being like, "Oh, I love you so much, you're my future," and then he turns around and takes all of your college money and says, "Whoops, gave it to my real son, see ya." Like, dude, what are you doing? You're such a fraud. He literally scammed you and your mom, and that is just so awful. You guys do not deserve that. I really hope your mom wins this fraud situation, because what your stepdad did to you is unacceptable. And the fact that this college fund was literally just like a carrot on a string is just so messed up. An entitled jerk thinks that he's above other customers by literally demanding that the cashier check out him and only him first and foremost, as he then decides to walk out of the store in protest because he doesn't get exactly what he wants. Here's how it happened. Okay, so today was my first time seeing an entitled customer in real life, and this incident took place earlier today at a Dollar General. I was looking around for some Pokemon packs for my collection and decided to look inside this Dollar General, but I didn't find any in the toy section, so I decided to go up to the front. Being in the United States on July 3rd, there was a rather long line of older people with things like paper plates and plastic utensils, but there was one customer of note who we will call Kevin for the sake of the story. Kevin is an elderly man looking to be in his early 70s or late 60s, and he has to walk with some sort of cane. Kevin was second in line at the time, and the one cashier working the entire store had finished ringing up the woman first in line. She decided to buy ice, so the cashier told Kevin something along the lines of, "I'm sorry, sir, but you'll need to wait while I do something for her." Well, Kevin said to her, "I'm not waiting one dang second. I've been waiting in this line for 2 hours, and I will not wait any longer." Now, the cashier, not letting Kevin get his way, replied by saying, "Sir, she bought ice and I need to unlock it for her. It will only take about 30 seconds. Kevin responded by saying, "I don't care. I've been waiting here long enough. Ring up my items now or I'll leave them here and leave this place immediately." The cashier then said without missing a beat, wait. I'm not gonna let you talk to me like that. I need to get this lady her ice, so please wait. After that, Kevin just starts walking towards the door without his cane. He needs to be reminded by the guy behind him that he left his cane there, and he angrily grabs it and walks off. The cashier later said that she'd been working at Dollar General for 3 years, and she had people doing things like throwing items on the ground, so she was used to entitled people. The cashier and other customers were very nice. So to the cashier, if you're reading this, thank you for not letting this entitled man get what he wants. Yeah, this is just some weird, cringy behavior. Like, all he had to do was wait 30 seconds and this would have been taken care of. But instead, he decided to be a weirdo and just walk out as if that's doing anything. Because at the end of all of this, he literally just didn't get any of his items he was trying to purchase, quite literally wasting his and everybody else's time in the process. Am I the jerk for not paying for new tires for my sister's car after using it for literally only 3 months? Because right now she's claiming that I owe her, and at this point I honestly just don't know what to do. Here's how it went down. Okay, to start things out, I have a really old car, but I'm currently saving it for my brother because he just got his license, and cars are expensive to get right now. I drive a lot for work, and I am in college that is pretty far away, so I travel a lot during the semester. My car's been having issues when I travel far, so I've been scared to drive it far. My sister has 2 cars. One she got when she needed a car, and the other because she wanted it. Now, we agreed that I could use one of her cars. I don't make much money, so she said I only need to pay half the insurance and I'd be responsible if I broke anything. Before I started driving the car, my dad said the back tires needed to be changed. They never got replaced, but the car has been fine. I've had it for maybe 3 or 4 months, and now my sister's moving out and will take the car with her. Now that she's moving out and the semester is finally over, and I also had to do some summer course, my sister is saying that I have to change the tires. But I become annoyed with it, so I was like, whatever, and I'll change the back 2 tires just to get them to stop bothering me. But she started yelling at me that I have to do all 4 because I had the vehicle and it was the principle of it that I had to change all 4 because I used the car for 4 months. And she's the one that gave my car an oil change when she used it. And on that note, I've literally told her I can pay her back for the oil change because it is far less expensive. So we end up getting into a heated argument, and she's like cursing at me and everything that apparently I never said thank you, but it's like, yeah, well, I did, but I don't think I'm like super nice about it. Like, I believe I said something along the lines of like, all right, cool, thanks. But she got these tires 3 years ago. Pretty much all of this damage is from her because my 4 months does not equal to her 2 years and 6 months of usage. I personally believe I shouldn't even have to pay for the 2 of them, but we kind of agreed with me paying for 2 and her paying for the other 2, but I still would need to get all 4 changed at the same time. But now she's saying because I won't pay for all 4, I owe her the other half of the insurance that I haven't paid. And you know what? I told her no, I will not be doing that. So she said I can't use her car anymore. And I just laughed in her face and I was like, okay, Mr. Tough Guy, which I'm not gonna lie was immature, but she got me so frustrated. Anyways, I took my car back and I was gonna see if I can take it in the next week to get it changed. I then told my boyfriend and he is really upset because he feels my family always takes advantage of me. He thinks I should text her and tell her I won't pay for all the tires or the insurance. He says I shouldn't be responsible for the tires when they were already bad when I started using the car. He also says I never agreed to pay for all 4 tires or the extra insurance, and the car will be gone soon anyways. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I seriously just don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk, your sister's an idiot. She literally is the one who destroyed those tires, and now she's trying to be like, oh, you need to pay for them. You used them for 4 months, that's on you. And it's like, no, that's not on me, are you nuts? How am I responsible for something you literally caused for years, all because I used it for what, 3 months? And the fact that she's trying to be like, oh, well, I changed your oil once. It's like, lady, I can get that done for like, what, 25 bucks at some places? Like, why are you trying to act like this is a big deal? Meanwhile, getting new tires is like hundreds of dollars. It's not even comparable. Like, she's out of her mind if she thinks it is. So no, you're not the jerk. This is honestly so weird and stupid in my opinion, because if anyone's paying for those tires, it's absolutely your sister and not you. My boss tried to claim that I was being too controlling with the menus, despite the fact that I was literally just trying to improve them. So I decided to maliciously comply by literally backing out and stopping all the progress I made for the restaurant, causing the entire place to fall into disrepair and then eventually close down. Here's how it happened. Okay, so this happened about 10 years ago when I worked at a restaurant. The place had only been running under current management for a few months and had an unconventional working culture. The boss spent as much time as he could upstairs working on other projects, and staff did not have clearly defined duties, but we all chipped in wherever their abilities allowed. I was hired as a bar manager, but I also helped clearing tables, cleaning, maintenance, doing administrative stuff, and anything else that may have cropped up. And overall, we were encouraged to have creative ideas. Now, for the most part, everyone was quite happy, but when the boss did come down, he could be pretty stressy and irritable, especially if anything went wrong. Also, sometimes there were gaps or flaws in the smooth operation of business, roles, as there were things that no one had skills for or didn't think of, and their roles weren't organized thoroughly. Well, at some point, I decided I was going to tackle an issue that was bothering me. The menus were pretty haphazard and not very professional. The menus were stored on a shared document that any staff member could edit and print. The menu would just be a black text on a piece of A4 paper. Now, staff had varying degrees of computer literacy, and the menus would end up totally messy, full of typos and containing many different fonts and formatting styles. Also, the boss would frequently ask the chefs to change up the menu choices, as he thought it would get boring, or he would buy different stock on a deal that needed to be used, and nobody would bother coordinating with the kitchen to check that the menu matched what was available. So naturally, there would be a lot of silly situations that arose once customers' orders had been taken to the kitchen, and waiting staff would have to go back and get customers to order something else. Basically, they would find issues by trial and error during service, and only after this, they would alter the shared document and print new menus out. However, it could be very hard to get time for editing and printing during a busy shift, so the staff would often deliver erroneous menus to the customer, along with a verbal list of alterations and additions. Anyways, despite being bar staff, I decided to do something about the menu problems. My motivation was that I love my job, I love the team, and I love the restaurant. I wanted customers to have a good time and could see there were easy ways to make the system work a lot better for everyone. Firstly, I started arriving earlier. That way, I had time to discuss menu availability with the chefs and do all the editing that was necessary before service started. If we had a quiet spell, I started training the waiting staff to edit menus as well and resolve any formatting discrepancies. It was not altogether easy to get everyone on board, as they were all used to the haphazard way of doing things, but they were a good bunch and they humored me. In addition, I started working on prettier menus, and in my own time, I even did it at home. Now, I'm far from being a publishing expert, but I had an old version of Word that I was very familiar with, and I spent an awful lot of time tweaking and messing around to produce, if I have to say, some very pretty folded card menus, with little designs and borders and nice colors. I knew these menus would not transfer well through the shared document and the work printer, and the formatting would likely go kaput. So rather than tackling the regular daily menu that everyone would need to be able to edit and print at work, I focused on special menus that were one-off events. For instance, our upcoming Valentine's night and Mother's Day menus, and the steak and curry night menus, which we rarely changed. The boss had decided on the dishes for these nights according to his whims, so I was working on his draft. I showed him the nice menus I was working on to the chefs, and I got them on board with collaborating to make sure our actual offerings and our menu matched up, during which process we found a few catering difficulties with the dishes the boss had proposed. So we worked to find something agreeable to both the boss and the kitchen, and had everyone working on the same plans. I then found an old wooden display rack in a storeroom and fixed it front of house to display the special menus, and we handed them out to all the customers as advertising. Now, at this point, service was running much smoother due to the extra effort on the daily menus. Much less stress, happier customers, happier kitchen. The boss didn't really notice much, as he was never usually around to see the mayhem. The Valentine's Day and Mother's Day events were roaring successes. We had full house, everything went like clockwork, and everyone was happy. And we had loads of excellent reviews for these nights. Time rolled on, and I worked with the kitchen to launch a daily kids pick and mix menu. And you know what? The customers loved it. Then there was Christmas Day, which again was a great success. Of course, I'm not claiming all the success for myself. Our chefs made great food, and the staff were lovely, friendly, and hardworking. But I guess I didn't even realize until I did it how much the work on the menu would pull everything together. Soon it was time for Valentine's Day again, which was a really big night for us. And this is where a boss-shaped spanner got in the works and malicious compliance ensued. I had again produced a beautiful menu with a cupid on the front and a border of little red hearts. I would print them at home in my spare time at my own expense, as well as the other special menus, and keep the display unit stocked up. On the faithful day, I arrived at work and I see immediately that the boss is in a foul mood. It transpires that he wanted to give a Valentine's menu to someone, and there were none in the display rack. I had brought a bundle with me, and I also apologized for them running out, but he is still clearly unhappy. He then accuses me of trying to control the menus in order to make myself indispensable. He then complains that the pretty menus are not in the shared document. His tone is so mean, meaner than I've ever heard him, and it honestly really stung. I try to explain that the menus won't hold their formatting, but that the text-only version is available on the shared document. He says, in that case, I shouldn't be developing them on my own computer. It should only be done on the business computer. Now, there's a lot I could have said to defend myself, and he clearly doesn't realize that it's not something I have time for during working hours, nor am I very adept with the software available at work. But I don't even want to bother explaining. He was so condescending, so accusatory over something I've done unpaid, just to help out his business is that I don't even want to engage with it. So I decide there and then never to have anything more to do with the menu. I share my Word document as requested, and that's the end of it. I run the bar and I clear the tables and I clean and fix stuff up. But I don't do anything on my own time, and especially not with menus. And before long, the display rack is empty. The waiting staff gradually slide back into their old ways of working. No one coordinates in the kitchen, service is frequently chaotic, and Mother's Day is slowly approaching. I see the boss's draft menu and I can see issues with it, so I decide to book that night off, and trust me, it was a total disaster. The next day, the boss is lamenting to me how embarrassing it was. He doesn't seem to realize at all that it had anything to do with me withdrawing my job protection racket. He's not mad at me, he just doesn't understand what went wrong. He says I'm lucky I wasn't there. A lot of stuff on the menu, you know, the black text printed on A4 paper, had not been available. The kitchen hadn't even seen the menu until the morning of the event and didn't know how to make the dishes or even have the equipment to do so. Christmas Day eventually arrives and it's even more of a disaster. The advertised menu doesn't tally up with what's served. The boss is getting stressed out and falls out with the staff, and customers are beyond disappointed. Over this last couple of months, my daughter was ill and I had to take a lot of time off. Actually, my boss is really good about my situation and even continues paying me, but eventually, I feel like it's better if I just leave. In the next months, the restaurant gets even more erratic and disorganized, and in less than a year, the business folds under. Not because I left, but because the boss is moody, which then the staff fall out with him, the service gets even more erratic, and the customers dwindle. But I do think leaving had some part to play, as I used to be quite good at thinking ahead, at organizing, and keeping the peace between the boss and the staff, because this boss caused a lot of problems. Wow, this guy literally is an idiot. It's almost like he just didn't want his restaurant to succeed at all. You're telling me he went after you, the person who's working off the clock, to make sure the menu actually looks doable? Like, I don't know about you, but that guy's an idiot, and he has no business sense to realize a valuable employee when he sees one. So honestly, good for you for improving that restaurant, but also good for you for getting out of there, because that guy was gonna drive it into the ground pretty much no matter what.
My husband received an inheritance check from his mom, and when I asked my husband about it, he was very angry and said that it was his money and any future inheritance would not be a part of our family budget. He ended up going on several trips with his brothers and spending the money, and I was okay with that, even if I was hurt that he was angry when I asked about it. Then, 2 years later, my grandpa died, and since I'm the only grandchild, I inherited a huge amount of money and his estate. I used the money to buy the entire building that my family lives in, and now I'm collecting rents from all the tenants. And even though my husband doesn't have to pay rent anymore, he's demanding that he has access to the money from all the tenants paying rent so he can have some more fun spending money. In other words, his inheritance is his, but my inheritance is ours. Here's what happened. Make sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting that bell to turn on notifications. My husband and I had triplets, all boys, about 2 years after we got married. They had some health issues, and because of that, my husband wanted me to quit my job to take care of our boys at our home, since it was cheaper than paying for specialized childcare. I agreed. Our family lives in a row of townhomes, 6 homes in our building that were owned by our landlord at the time. I was offered a job cleaning townhomes when a tenant moved out by our landlord. I asked my husband about it, and he said that he didn't care, but he didn't want to interfere with my responsibilities at home. We also agreed that the money would be mine since it's a second job. We did this for 3 years. It grew into where I cleaned a few other places for my landlord. I just put the money into savings. My father-in-law died in June of 2019. When my husband received a check from his mom, I asked my husband about it. He got angry and said that it was his money and any future inheritance would not be a part of our family budget. My husband ended up going on several trips with his brothers with that money. I was okay with that, although I was hurt that he got angry when I asked about it. In October of 2021, my grandpa died. I am the only grandchild. My parents made good money, so his estate was left to me. I just transferred the money, rented out the farmland around his home. I did decide to keep his home since it's close to my parents' house. I live 4 hours away from them. I didn't talk to my husband about it since it was my inheritance. January of this year, my landlord came to me and let me know he was selling the townhomes I live in. With rising costs around us, I was worried about it. It would cause a major impact on our family's budget. Things worked out to where I was able to use my inheritance combined with what I had saved from working to buy the building. My husband came to me and told me he wants me to deposit part of the rental income from the other townhomes into our family account, allowing more spending money for fun. But I reminded him of our agreements, along with we no longer have a rent payment. We ended up in a fight. He is saying I am being a jerk for not sharing the money coming in from these rental units units that were purchased with my inheritance. So there was an update from the future that gave some more context that said this. My husband and I had a long talk when he came home. He knows I am leaving on a trip and asked to go. I told him I needed time. I showed him the comments on the thread. He said he would do whatever I wanted. He volunteered to sign a postnuptial before I even asked him. He doesn't want a divorce. He was shocked with how many people recommended that here. My BFF's husband is a lawyer. He said he can draw up the paperwork tonight. We will sign tomorrow. I will update you all after my trip, how it goes, and I will also decide once he signs a prenuptial on my inheritance. Then I will ask him about putting my work income in our family budget. He can help when he is off work with the house and kids as a possible compromise, allowing him to have some spending money and giving me a break. So fast forward into the future again, and this is what happened. Life has been interesting. I had a blast on my trip. My husband was pushed into the deep end of parenting. 3 active babies combined with medical care. He was in way over his head. When I came home, his mom, my aunt, and my husband were all there. His mom complains all the time about what kinds of foods I give the boys and what to wear. My mother-in-law decided while I was there she was going to do it right. There was a lot that I came home to, but I will just share one thing of each of the boys. Baby number 1 is a type 1 diabetic. I am very careful with his diet. I went to a nutritionist. Together we set a meal plan for him, aka the food my mother-in-law complains about. My husband and my mother-in-law had a hard time keeping his blood sugars in check. When I got home, my mother-in-law was on the verge of tears because she kept poking him. Baby number 1 didn't like it. Now, when my mother-in-law tries to come near him, he just starts crying. Baby number 2 wears hearing aids. They cost $5,000 and need to be changed every 6 months or so as he grows. The other 2 babies are fascinated by them. 1 is now missing. Baby number 3 has heart problems. The thing my husband didn't find out is that baby number 3 hates anything on his face, so you have to rock him to sleep, then carefully put the oxygen on his nose. My aunt said that my husband called her the first night around midnight. His mom was already there. When I came home, both my husband and his mom apologized to me. The past couple of days I have spent doing laundry and getting things back in order, but I had a really good time. So was I the jerk for not splitting my inheritance when my husband didn't want to split his with mine from before? In the update, it sounded like the husband was willing to go along with whatever the wife wanted and sign whatever he had to because he didn't want to get a divorce. Maybe part of that is because he realizes that it would be hypocritical to say that she can't enjoy any of the money from his inheritance when he wants to make the money off of the rent from the building that was paid for by her inheritance. It sounds like the husband blew all of his inheritance on fun spending, or however she put it, by going on trips with his brothers. There were a lot of really strong opinions about this whole situation, one of which says, why are you married to this greedy hypocrite? His money is his, and how dare you even ask about it, but your money is for both of you, and how dare you not want to share? Girl, what? He stuck you with caring for 3 babies with health issues and the house? From what I'm understanding, the husband still benefits from the inheritance anyway, even if he doesn't get the money to spend for fun spending or whatever she called it, because he no longer has to pay for rent because they own the entire building now. So in a way, he still does benefit from this whole thing, even if she's not directly giving him money to go blow on whatever he's doing with his brothers. Some people actually brought that up. Somebody said, plus how much he doesn't need to spend on rent each month, he's going to have way more spending money already. This is wild. She ought to keep charging him rent. The OP actually responded to that and said, my dad told me to charge him rent. My dad's thinking is boys will need more space when they grow, making the townhouse too small for our family. My dad said if my husband continued to pay rent, then I would have the money for a bigger house in a few years. Another thing the OP responded to was somebody saying, I think that is a solid financial decision as a tenant and landlord. If you stop paying rent now as a tenant, going back when you need a larger place will be difficult. As a landlord, that money is earned in managing the property. The OP talks about the rent and says, our rent before I bought the property was $2,000 each month. The surrounding townhomes are closer to $2,500 to $2,800 a month. That's a lot of money. If there was this much of an issue to get up to this point, I have a hard time believing that there's going to be a smooth transition into having the husband pay rent in this situation when he knows that the wife owns a house, but maybe it'll work out. Maybe that's the right way to go. But if you were in this situation, what would you do, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? My cousin got married to a woman, and after they got married, she said that she is still young and wants to explore her carnal desires before truly settling down. This absolutely crushed my cousin. Since she wouldn't drop it, he agreed to an open relationship, and I helped him hook up with way more girls than his wife was expecting. So because of that, she's now trying to force the relationship back closed again because she doesn't like what her husband, my cousin, is doing. point. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My cousin is like a brother to me. He wanted to advance his education and career in the US, so I offered to pay for his education and help my cousin with his transition to his new life here by recommending him a job in the company I work in and letting him stay on my property. My cousin is the studious type, very academically inclined but socially awkward. Before coming to the United States, he never had a girlfriend before or many friends. He spends a lot of time on the computer and just studying, preferring not to go out. Then he met a girl. He fell in love with her and got married. He's in his late 20s and this was his first relationship. He calls me one day. His wife wants to open up the relationship, saying she is still young and wants to, quote, explore her carnal desires before truly settling down. He was crushed. He called me crying, and it absolutely breaks my heart to hear him crying like that. We talked a bit more. This is an ongoing problem. His wife was insistent on her way and refused consulting or other professional help. In my opinion, when a woman wants to open up a relationship, it means she is having an emotional affair and wants her husband's permission to lay with that person so that she is not the bad person. From the perspective of being his boss, I could see how much this hurt him. He was unable to perform at work, and I can't stand looking at him like that, so I decided to talk to him. I said, look, it's clear that this is affecting you very badly. Have you considered taking her up on the offer since she wants to open it up? He agrees to try. The problem is he has absolutely no game at all. So I decided to help him out. Me and my wife spent a lot of time on his image. He's not poor. He's making $250,000. I know as his boss, he just doesn't know how to present himself. We set up his social media accounts to make him more appealing. We went to meet girls together and we acted as his wing buddies. I let him drive my car. He was driving a Camry, so we needed a much better ride, and used one of my properties, which was for investment purposes, so he doesn't have to go back to his home. And guess what? It worked. He started hooking up a lot. We made sure to add all of his hookups in his social media so that his wife can see. His wife was not happy at all. She thought that he would not be that wild and wanted their open relationship closed. Once she knew it was me and my wife who helped him, she called me and scolded me. She was screaming and I couldn't be bothered hearing her screeching harpy voice, so I just hung up the phone on her. This happened yesterday. Today I've been getting calls from her friends scolding me for being a jerk, for ruining their relationship. I basically just retort, she ruined the relationship. I'm just helping my cousin. I don't get it. She wants to open up the relationship. He got more successful than her in this open relationship situation, and now she wants to close the relationship, and it's my fault that I'm ruining their relationship. So, am I the jerk here? But before you decide, here's a little more information. I just want to say I agree with most people that their relationship is doomed and that they should just cut it off. But he is an idiot with a set idea of how a relationship should work out. He does not want to divorce unless necessary. His wife doesn't want to consider counseling. Me, I just personally want him to be happy, so I don't want to force the idea of a divorce to him. But I am working hard to lead him into that mindset. To answer many of the messages I am getting, yes, English is not my first language, but it has never affected my ability to do my job. I also have 2 masters, so my English can't be that bad. In terms of my work, I am a director in one of the MNC, which is in the engineering field. My cousin is a very hardworking, simple, thrifty man with simple needs who just happens to get a good job that pays well. He doesn't spend unnecessarily, he invests well, spends wisely, and overall has a good head on his shoulders. This, I think, has to do with the fact that his family is not well off. And for Asians, one of the ways to elevate your economic status is to study hard, which he excels in, then get a good job. This habit stays with him into adulthood. So, now that you know everything, am I the jerk for helping my cousin hook up with girls after his wife wants to open up their relationship? This is one very important thing that the wife should have told the cousin before they got married. This is not the kind of thing you wait until after you're married to bring up and say, oh, by the way, I want to do this. It's yet another situation where somebody wants the cake and to eat it too. They want the benefits of this whole arrangement, presumably, and also want to have her own desires fulfilled in a way that goes completely contrary to what the cousin thought he was walking into. It's a selfish move to not be on the same page and not communicate that to the person that's supposed to be your husband before you're actually married. And I'm sure people will say, oh, maybe she didn't know until after she got married. Well, there had to have been some inkling, some sort of seed that was planted that maybe it wasn't clear she wanted this exactly per se, but she had to have known she wasn't going to be completely satisfied going to this marriage in the first place. And like the OP said, I'm on the same page thinking that because of all these miscommunications, misunderstandings, and this whole branch of events that happened because of it, this relationship probably is doomed. I mean, if the wife is not upfront enough to talk about all this stuff and then is so angry when the husband, the OP's cousin, goes out and starts hooking up with all these different people, then that kind of just says one thing. It says that she wanted it to be only on her end so she could have her cake and eat it too. I think like a lot of people are pointing out, he should probably just help his cousin get a divorce, because I don't know how you come back from all of this and how this gets any better or even stays the same without getting worse. So if you were the one in the situation and the person you were married to told you this, what would you do? How would you handle it? Let me know, jerk or not a jerk, down below. Am I the jerk for not being happy that my sister is pregnant again? My sister got knocked up by her boyfriend right out of high school and got married the next year, then proceeded to pop out another baby every year or two, so she has 4 now at 24 years old. She's a stay-at-home mom even though she was brilliant and could have gotten a free ride to a great university. Since hers are the only grandkids, our parents fawn over her like she's the next coming of Christ. They gush over every new tooth or haircut like it's some huge achievement. The problem is, her husband's business wasn't great even before the pandemic, and it's barely limping along now. My sister doesn't work and my parents have limited income. So guess who's constantly being told to lend them money for things like school fees, car seats, car payments, new strollers, etc. They don't even ask. My mom just texts me and says, "Your sister needs this much money for the kids." And I'm supposed to cough it up. If I complain, they accuse me of being jealous because I don't have a husband and a family even though I'm older. I'm only 26. So over Easter, I notice my sister isn't drinking and I think, oh no, here we go again. And sure enough, she stands up and announces that she's been inseminated with yet another precious miracle. Everyone's gushing and I just try to stay quiet and out of the way. Later, she asks me if everything's alright and I try to play it off, but she pushes. So I asked her if she and her husband could really afford another baby. She very snippily replies, "God will provide like he has so far," which really pissed me off. I yelled that no, actually God didn't provide for her babies, I did, and I wasn't going to give them any more handouts. It devolved into a big argument with everyone shouting at me, and basically I've been banned from my own family unless I apologize. I have not apologized. It's been radio silence except for one text from my mom saying that if my sister miscarries, it's my fault for stressing her out. I asked if my sister was showing any symptoms, but no one will answer or tell me. I don't know. I don't think that I'm the jerk, but I don't want to be the reason she miscarries. Also, I think that I might be the jerk because secretly, I think it would be better if she did, even though I wouldn't say that to her. So, am I the jerk? All financial aspects aside, I hope that that last sentence didn't mean that she secretly wishes for her sister to miscarry. Is that what she meant? Because you shouldn't wish that on anyone. Even if you are the one that is solely providing for them and you don't want to provide for them anymore. I was on her side until that last part, because that last sentiment is something entirely different than just being frustrated with the financial aspect of it. It's kind of a disconnect. Maybe that's not what she meant, and maybe she is under a ton of financial stress. But one of the most clever responses is someone saying the next time your mom says, "Oh, your sister needs money," and you need to give it to them, just say, "No, my sister said that God will provide, so I'm giving him a turn." I actually don't know if the stress-causing miscarriages thing is real science or if that's just something that people say, but one of the responses addressed that and said, stress doesn't cause miscarriages. OP should remind the mom of that anytime a text like that comes in. If stress caused a miscarriage, there'd never be any high school teen moms because nobody's getting pregnant at less than 18 years old and not super stressed about it. And there would probably be no moms in general. All of the pregnant women I've ever known have been stressed to some degree during pregnancy, even the ones with easy planned pregnancies. And then they cite the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, and all of the NHS as sources that all disagree with stress causing miscarriages as well, except in extreme and complicated circumstances where it is sometimes a factor, but not what an argument is going to cause. So let me know what you would do if you're in this situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. While I was unemployed, I was scammed hard. This is how I got revenge on the scammer. First and foremost, this did not happen in the United States. Some events might be pursuable up there, but down here, it is mostly no man's land regarding this kind of scam that I fell for. For the sake of this story, we're going to refer to where I'm from as no man's land. My wife is a nurse. Back then, back in early 2000, she worked in an ICU unit of a relatively exclusive and therefore expensive hospital. Specifically, she had to care for patients that had undergone cardiac arrest. At the same time, I was working for a small company that was going out of business. The owners were retiring. We hadn't secured any important contracts lately, and in my country, you have to pay employees severance unless you file for bankruptcy. So they decided to shut down while they still had enough cash to pay our severances. One day, my wife calls me and tells me about this gentleman in his late 50s that had been on the verge of passing away. And after a close call, he was so grateful. We'll call him Benny Lowy. This gentleman happened to work in electronic imports, which gave him access to incredibly convenient deals. Long story short, he was so grateful for what my wife did as a nurse that he wanted to sell us an LCD TV, a store demo unit that had been used just once, and we'd only need to pay 1/4 of its retail price as long as we kept it quiet because he was risking his relation with the brand. It caught me off guard, but I said yes and she paid. Anyway, the only TV in the house prior to this had been a wedding present and weighed over 100 pounds. We were very eager to replace it. I was naive, I know, but I thought, being her patient, she knew all the personal data from this guy, so it seemed unlikely that he would target her for a scam. His father was a known businessman. Now retired and approaching his 80s, Mr. Lowy Sr. was well respected in his community and wouldn't have let his son wreak havoc. Also, my wife had acquaintances in common with Benny's brother, a known doctor of another hospital. So Christmas was approaching. She asked Benny, who had already been discharged and back home, for advice regarding the present she wanted to give me, a phone. He hooked her up with the best she could think of. Now, I can't remember the exact model, but it was a Sony Ericsson flagship and it wasn't yet offered by local carriers. He had access to it because of his status as the local representative for said brand. She went with it and paid. That brings us to chapter 2 of this story, the job position. I've said my employer was shutting down, so for the sake of it, she asked Benny if he knew someone that needed an IT guy. He said,
"Oh no, of course. I'll meet your husband at his place tomorrow."
And there I was, in a gas station uptown. He pulled over in a luxury car. Mr. Lowy was a normal-looking guy. He used a cane and had noticeable knee or hip pain. We sat down in the gas station coffee shop and he told me about a mid-management position reporting to him in a mining company I had barely heard about. He coached me on what I should say in the upcoming job interview. We spoke about salary. I was dazzled. Wait, mining? Didn't you say he was into imports? He was that kind of guy you can't pause to question because he'd already thrown something extra into the mix, and this position had a better paycheck than the one I was being laid off. In the next days, we had a few phone calls. Stuff looked promising. I had already been laid off. We agreed he'd pick me up on December 24th and introduced me to senior managers as the recommended help desk junior manager. I woke up extra early, put on my best suit, waited in the front yard, but hours went by. I had planned to be back before noon to arrange stuff for that night's dinner because my parents were coming over. After calling him repeatedly, he told me that he was assaulted and robbed.
"They took my cane and broke it over my knee,"
he wailed. Poor guy. I told him to forget about my interview for the time being, and he said,
No, I promised you. I'll make it up to you, I swear."
Of course, since he had been injured, he wasn't able to deliver the items my wife bought from him. That night, my mom asked me about the new job. I could not bring myself to tell her about the delay. I told her it was going fine. But that night, I Googled him. Nothing showed up except for some awards in the Imports and Customs Associations of whatever. He called me to reschedule our interview December 31st. Again, picture me in my best suit outside in front of my house on a summer morning. Of course, he didn't show up. When I finally reach him, he tells me that when his car had been stolen last week, they took his wallet too, which these thugs eventually dropped during another robbery, so he had now been detained as a suspect for that. He hadn't been able to pick up the imported electronics at the customs office, so they had moved them to another custody unit where it would take a couple of weeks to retrieve. That night, we went to my parents' house for New Year's Eve, and my mother asked me about the new job. "It's all fine," I said. I Googled him again, this time with variations regarding his name or the supposed company he was setting me into. Nothing showed up, nothing shady. The next call was a week later. He told me that because he was being involved in a police investigation, this mining company had fired him. But this was actually good because now I was going to be interviewed to take his position as the IT manager. This meant double my former paycheck and securing a position that would be a leap forward in my career, so I didn't ask too many questions. I was just grateful. All of those delays in the end would pay off. This situation, as you've already figured out, went on for weeks and weeks. My interview never happened. The electronics never arrived. We had lost our money, our time, our Christmas, our hopes, and I was still unemployed and hadn't been applying for job offers since I I had this one allegedly secured. I texted him back somewhere in between, and when I texted him, I said, "Why are you doing this?" He texted back,
"If you wanted to, you have nothing on me. But if you stick with me, you'll be rewarded tenfold."
Chapter 3. Cue the detective. Time went by. Eventually, my wife overhears from a couple about this patient in another hospital she was working at. Some nurses do part-time work at other hospitals. She had fell for it too, but her husband was a detective. So a few hours later, we were filling him in with the details of the scam that we fell for. Asking around, he found a third nurse scammed by this same guy. Soon enough, he was detained, this time for real, and admitted to have been scamming people due to mild dementia. This was invented impromptu. This detective talks him into an off-court deal in which he gives us back every cent, but not my time nor hopes, in exchange for us not pursuing any legal action. This was a decent deal because us, having failed to make a written agreement on any of these purchases, had at most a weak claim to our money. By the way, the money with which he paid us, he had to borrow from his father and some from his brother, the doctor. Remember, this didn't happen in the United States? This agreement is actually completely legal down here. Chapter 4. I made a blog. I couldn't go for any further legal action, but there wasn't a non-disclosure agreement whatsoever, and I thought, what could prevent other people falling into this scammer's lies? Well, perhaps some Google results, so I created a blog on WordPress. Think something like BennyLowy.thescammer.wordpress.com. It was a single post in third person telling my story. In the following days, that post comments had dozens of stories much like mine. I made them into posts. A few of them got their comments too, telling other people's stories. In a few weeks, looking for Benny Lowy's name on Google led to this blog. In my country, you can review updates regarding court ongoing cases, except for felonies that are non-public. Searching for his national ID, which I had known thanks to our settlement as a sued party, I could just find an eviction action due to failing to pay his condo's lease. But looking for him as the suing party, I found out that he had sued the WordPress URL, our fictional local domain, which was registered by a local guy through GoDaddy.com. Following up with this case, this guy had spent a month trying to demonstrate that this local guy had to take down the blog I made in the .com domain. Go figure. I was tempted then and there to set a post on the blog saying, if you wanted to, you have nothing on me. However, I have never attempted to let him know who's doing this. I just log into the blog every once in a while. Today was the first time I logged in for years, and I keep finding in the comments more and more scammed people. All of them in a vulnerable moment of their life. Unemployed guys, small startups looking for an angel investor, small branch salespeople pursuing a promising commission, those who have in time reached a compensation or agreement. It's because Benny's now ancient father had to chip in. From what they say, his brother has gone no contact. Most of the commenters leave their email addresses, and I have known of a few that have teamed up with each other and succeeded in legal actions. So was I the jerk for exposing his scam to this degree? There's a difference between going out and doing something like this to someone just to mess with them or because you're mad at them for something, but this guy Lowy is a massive serial scammer. If any of you guys have watched that documentary about the Tinder swindler, that guy was also a serial scammer, and he was doing it in a way so he couldn't legally get in trouble for a long time. He was basically using one girl's money to pay for an expensive lifestyle for the next girl, and then using that girl to get the money from her to pay for the next girl. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme with dating, sort of. But one of the only ways they were able to slow this down is when they finally got people to start investigating what he was doing, and then all of the victims of his scams started to find each other. Some of them lost their entire houses, life savings, their family's money, everything. But the sad thing in this story is that he is specifically targeting people that are in vulnerable positions, like the OP said. People that are unemployed or just people that need money in general for whatever reason they might be in a desperate position. And in a situation like that, you want to believe, even when it doesn't really make sense to. So if somebody had scammed you like this, how would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A person continuously steals my bicycle parking space and taunts me in Japanese. So I had to get some serious revenge. Here is what I did. So I'm living in Japan now, and here people ride bicycles a lot. You can't leave your bike anywhere, and you have to pay for parking between $1 and $2 a day. There are very few free parking areas for bicycles. Most people leave their bikes at the same place, so they pay monthly because it's cheaper and you have your own space. This started a couple of weeks ago. Someone in my building started having a guest who decided to steal my bicycle parking space whenever they came to visit. Sometimes they stayed the whole night, so I had to go to the station, pay $1 and come all the way home walking, which meant I would need to walk to the station the next day, getting up earlier, walk about 20 minutes to the station while carrying my heavy bag. All the bicycle spaces have a number, which means they are reserved for someone. Mine is number 105, but this person decided to take mine whenever they came to visit. The second time this happened, I told the building manager, but they didn't do anything. The third time I saw the bicycle there, it was the same red expensive bicycle. I left a note in Japanese saying, "Please don't leave your bicycle here. This is my space and I am using it every day." I found the note taped with the tape I used to tape it on their bike to my parking space, and it had a couple of bad words in Japanese at the end. Basically, he was not only stealing my space, but making fun of me by insulting me. Fine. It's just fine. I probably wouldn't have done anything about it if he hadn't ran those words. This triggered me and got the worst out of me. This person did it again a couple of times, so I knew this would continue. I was thinking about buying another bicycle, a better, more expensive one that I could use to go on cycling trips, so a good chain/lock was needed anyway. I bought one of the thickest they had at the store and decided to try its efficiency. I locked his bicycle next time I saw it there. It hasn't moved for 7 days. There were 2 notes. The first one was a very aggressive one with more bad words and threats about going to the police, which I don't care. Let's go that way, buddy. The second note, days later, was an apology, and they begged and begged for me to unlock the bike because they tried to break the lock, but they couldn't break it. I guess he has learned his lesson. I'm pretty sure he won't do it again, but I just want to enjoy this feeling of victory a couple days more. I will free his bike in 2 or 3 days, I guess. To give some more updates from the future, the OP updated by saying, in order to keep my name out of any legal issues, I changed parking lots. It is not as close as this one, but I could come back in a month or 2, and I would be getting a new space, so it would be okay. Also, I left a tiny and very discreet note saying that I will free his bike in exchange for $100. I wanted to ask for more, but he probably wouldn't pay it. I taped the bill under the seat. I will wait a couple of weeks. If he doesn't pay, I will take it out at night as far as possible from the place, steal his seat, cut the brakes and tires, and all the other small pieces I can get or destroy. I can't steal the bike and dump it somewhere else because he locked it, so I would need to carry it. And lastly, the lock that I got is the thickest and one of the most expensive things in the entire bicycle shop. You cannot cut it with normal tools because the thing is as thick as my finger. I'm pretty sure you would need some kind of industrial tools to cut it. It would be much easier to cut the parking device because the metal is thinner there. So was I the jerk? I think just asking this guy for $100 straight up might not actually work out because he's probably going to feel like he's being extorted, but maybe if you just explained, hey, I had to pay all these parking fees for the last month that you've been using my spot, and I had to pay for the spot that I wasn't even able to use. If you broke it down like that by saying you're just paying for the thing that you stole from me, my time, and the actual bill that I had to pay for this parking spot and the other one, because really he's paying for 2 spots at the same time. He's paying for the one at the station and the one at his place. Then maybe this person would actually give him the money, but it's hard to imagine him giving him the money just for no reason, taping the money under the seat without any explanation, unless he really needs that bicycle back. I'm surprised that neither one of them found where the other one was, because eventually, if this keeps going on and there is no resolution, they might actually run into each other one day, and that would be awkward, because the bike parking spot thief is acting real tough in these notes by writing all these bad words in there, but who's to say that he'll actually be like that in person? He might be very non-confrontational when he actually meets him face to face. But if you were in this situation, let me know what you would do, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My neighbor didn't want to pay for the right trash bags, so they kept throwing trash into my yard so that I would have to pay for the trash bags and put them out myself. So I decided to get some revenge. Here's what I did. My now ex-neighbor was pretty trashy. Cars sitting on blocks in the yard, cigarettes hanging out of her mouth while she's 9 months pregnant, blasting Kid Rock tunes level trashy. Well, this lady decided that paying $1 per trash bag was just too much. Our township will only pick up your trash if it's in one of the pre-approved purple bags though, so normal trash bags will just be left behind. The trash truck just drives right past them. Her solution: buy normal trash bags at the dollar store and have her 8-year-old child toss them over the fence into my yard. Now their trash is my problem. After confronting her, she just laughed, so I called the cops. They said that since the kid is so young and there was no proof his parents told him to do it, there was nothing that they could do. So this went on for about 4 months, me taking the bags of trash they tossed into my yard, wrapping them in purple bags that I paid out of my own pocket for, and putting them out to the curb. It was pretty infuriating and annoying. Not to mention the extra $3 or so a week I'm spending on trash bags. I'm slowly growing to hate this woman. It was annoying at first, but I was getting mad. Mind you, I owned my home and she was renting hers. So I get a hold of their landlord and I offer to buy the house for a decent amount above market value, 17% over market. He jumps at the offer, and soon I am the proud owner of the house next door to me. Sure, it cost me $71,000, but what price can you put on peace of mind? The very first thing I did was serve them an eviction notice in person across that same fence they like to throw trash over. That was 31 days ago. As of today, the unit is empty. I don't know where they went, but they're someone else's problem now. All because they didn't want to pay for her own trash bags. I think I'm gonna knock that house down and make my yard bigger. I've been wanting to put in a handball court. Was I the jerk? With these kind of stories, it's kind of hard to know if it's just laziness or if the neighbors were truly in a desperate situation where they were in some sort of extreme poverty and they needed every single dollar they could get. I mean, if they really didn't have the $3, that's one thing. But if they had enough money to get by on and the $3 wasn't a big deal and they were just throwing trash into their neighbor's yard because they were lazy, that makes them the jerk, obviously. I'm not sure where this is, but $71,000 to buy an entire house must be in a place where I'm guessing the overall cost of living is a lot lower in general. So let me know what you would do in this situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. After 15 years, my friend revealed that he was waiting and hoping for my beloved husband of 2 decades to die because he thinks that he is the next logical husband, as if that's how feelings work. We were in the middle of a conversation about how he can't find someone that will date him. He's been thoughtful and kind with me for 15 years, so I didn't have any feedback about what might be going wrong for him. Then he mentioned offhand how he's annoyed how, quote, women keep bringing up that I won't listen when they go on and on about how much danger they feel around men. Halfway through my response of, well, men are the ones that murder us, suddenly his whole personality changed and he got furious. He cut off my response and he shouted, oh, here we go. Women complaining again. You know, I'm only hanging around until your husband inevitably dies because I'm your next logical husband and I'm losing patience. And during that last word, he realized how phenomenally bad he slipped up. I thought he was one of my best friends, but apparently he never saw me as a person, just a logical prize to win someday when my rock climber husband inevitably has a fatal accident. He tricked me for 15 years, but now he holds the record in my life for going from best friend to blocked in less than 1 minute. A lot of people suggested some books to understand the entitlement mentality that some people have, and it's already helping me since this moment. And by the way, my beloved hubby and I double-checked all of his gear, and he reminded me of all the safety protocols he and his partners use to reassure me how he's trying to stick around with me as long as possible. And I always wear my helmet at the base of climbs, even when I'm not climbing. We're in this together. After a love like this, as if anyone thinks logic is how I'd find my next partner, entitlement is a hell of a drug, eh? If something like this were to happen, it must make you look back on your life and question what was even real at all. There's a certain famous TV show that I'm not going to say the name of in case one day you decide to watch it, but in this very famous TV show, there is a main character who owns a restaurant who's married to the other owner of this restaurant, and their hostess decides to quit after working there for 3 years, and that's when it's revealed that even though he was saying that she was the best employee he ever had and she was the best hostess, nobody can ever replace her, that he just secretly wanted a relationship with her the entire time. He starts blubbering to people that he was in love with her, even though he's married, even though she is also engaged, but in some weird part of his mind, he thought that if he kept employing her, I guess that maybe one day that they would end up together. And that character, the former hostess, thought of him as a really good guy, as a really good friend, but he had been harboring this for the entire 3 years, which when you compare it to this story is not long at all, because this guy has been holding on, pretending to be her best friend for 15 years. I've seen this trend recently where you have a host or somebody running the show who tells the guest, the person that's on the show, to call who they think is their best friend and tell them right on the spot, hey, I broke up with my partner, I want to hook up with you, can I come over right now, let's hook up. And the guests are sometimes completely sure that would never happen, and then when they make the phone call, they find out that their best friend did have feelings for them, and they start confessing those feelings before they even get to the house while they're still just on the phone. So if you were in this situation and you found out that your best friend of 15 years was waiting for your husband or wife to die so that they could be with you instead, how would you react? Let me know down below. My best guy friend just told me he's in love with me 2 days before my wedding. I've been with my fiance for 3 years, engaged for a little over a year, and my best friend and I have known each other since freshman year of college. We are all in our early 30s. This morning, I woke up to a long text from my guy best friend that he had sent around 6 a.m. Basically, it was him pouring his heart out. He said that he's been in love with me for years, but always hoped that I'd end up breaking up with my fiance and finally noticing him. He asked me to call off the wedding and run away with him. It said, quote, "I needed to tell you before it was too late." I just feel gross and sad. I have no feelings for him beyond platonic love. I've drafted a response and deleted it over and over. I haven't even told my fiance. I don't want him to have to worry about me so close to our wedding. I know I need to, but I don't know what to do or how to phrase it. What's worse is that he's become my fiance's friend too. I'm also pretty pissed that my friend chose such an unfortunate time to cause me such distress. There were so many times over the years he could have just bucked up and told me how he felt, but waiting until right before I'm married? Like I'm just gonna cancel my wedding and leave my fiance because of a text message? I want to tell him not to come to the wedding. I can't trust that he won't try to pull something. I don't even know if I want to talk to him again, but the thought of losing my best friend is heartbreaking. Hell, the thought of not having him at my wedding is really painful. He's put me in an uncomfortable, impossible situation. I wish it wasn't on me to deal with his feelings for him. I wish he either stopped being friends with me when he realized us ending up together would never happen, or he had told me a while ago. I don't want to kick him while he's down, but I need to make it clear that I have no feelings. The wedding is still on and I don't want him to attend. We have been friends for over a decade. I've been crying over this all day. I feel almost disgusted knowing that this whole time he had ulterior motives. How do I even go about dealing with this? I'm supposed to get married in 48 hours. I'll be showing my text to my fiance after he gets home from his brother's house. I won't send anything until he's here with me. So fast forwarding into the future, there actually is an update that takes place after the wedding. My husband, I love being able to say that now, and I got back from our honeymoon yesterday. I turned on my phone and opened the app and it was still signed into this account, so I had an oh yeah moment, and I figured that I'd post this update. So a lot of people here really helped validate the icky mess of the feelings that I was having. Thank you for that. Posting here really helped put my thoughts into words. So that night my fiance got home from his brother's house, I let him sit down and I showed him the text. He read it and I watched his eyes get bigger and expression angrier. Of course, I started apologizing like an idiot, and he told me that I didn't owe him an apology for anything. We talked and he told me he figured the guy had a crush but kept it respectful. And really, he had. We were close, but beyond a side hug during greetings and goodbyes, there was no physicality. I even let him read our past messages just to see that there was no emotional affair or me leading him on. I never even vented about my fiance when we would have arguments because I knew better than to do that. I talked to my mom, lol. So my fiance asked me what I wanted to do, and I said that while it did sadden me, I did not want him at our wedding. I was afraid that he would try some nonsense. We typed up a very brief message and it said, "Friend, I am sorry that you mistook my friendship for something more. The wedding is going to happen, and it'd be best if you didn't attend." To be clear, I let my fiance read this message and he stands by my decision to uninvite you. We wanted to make it clear that it was me who wanted him to not come, not just my fiance. Knowing him, he'd probably claim that my fiance forced me to uninvite him. He read the message and left it on read for a while. I honestly started getting pretty anxious over it, and my fiance asked if I wanted to block him. Part of me wanted to, and part of me wanted me to hear him out. And when he finally responded, the text was so long, I had to click on it to read it. It was horrible. He called me a liar for leading him on for over a decade, and that he hoped my fiance left me and that we were infertile. It was just horrible thing after horrible thing, and I started crying. My fiance took my phone into the other room while I sobbed. I think he called him, but I'm not sure. What I do know is after about an hour, he came back in, handed me me back my phone and told me that my friend was now blocked on everything. He would not be attending the wedding, and the best man and my maid of honor knew of the situation and would handle it for me. It was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, honestly. After reading that message, I really wasn't so sad that my friend wouldn't be attending anymore. And our wedding rocked. We had the time of our lives, surrounded by people who loved us, and we loved them. It still feels like a dream, to be honest, and if my friend tried to show up, I never heard anything of it. I guess that's the update. It's not nearly as dramatic and crazy as what people hope for, but I'm happy. While the OP may not have thought the update was crazy or dramatic, it was a little surprising that even after she laid it out for him, the friend said that she led him on for 10 years. I mean, from the perspective of both the OP and the husband, it seems like it was pretty clear to them that she didn't, but somehow he perceived it that way. Or maybe it was some sort of defense mechanism. He felt embarrassed because she showed the text message to the fiance and then had to think of something, so he just scrambled for, she led me on. She led me on. Yeah, that's what it was. She led me on. It's hard to tell based on what we know here, but as someone else mentioned in the responses, how on earth could the guy think that the OP was leading him on while she made plans to marry someone else? It was so cute that my crush is playing hard to get with me. She may be getting a restraining order and changing all of her documents, but I know she's waiting for just the right time to run away with me. So if you were in the situation, let me know what you do down below. A kid put some stuff in my yard, I ran it over with a lawnmower, and now the mother wants me to pay. So my yard goes pretty close to the neighbor's concrete pad where they have a basketball court set up. Neighborhood kids always go there to play and usually leave their bikes and things on my grass. It's not that big of a deal, except I have to ask them to move their stuff several times when I'm mowing. This is the first time I've mowed this year and the grass is a few inches higher than it should be. Anyway, a kid comes over and I'm mowing, but he puts the basketball he brought with him down in my grass. I get to the basketball and just decide I can nudge it with the front of the mower and get it out of the way. I made eye contact with the kid several times waiting for him to move it before I got there, and he never did, so I figured, whatever, it'll roll. Well, I bump it with my mower over to a section of mowed grass, and as I continue forward past where it was, there was a loud clunking and crackling sound like I just run over a rock. The rock turned out to be his iPhone. He was obviously upset that his phone was broken, and I did feel bad, but my thought was that he should have said something or moved it before I got there. He goes home, and about 30 minutes later, his mom shows up and tells me that I broke it and that I am responsible for replacing it, that I should have told him to move his stuff because I am the adult. I tell her I'm sorry about the phone, and I politely decline her request. She just says,
I promise you will be paying for it,
and then storms off. I'm not really sure what her next course of action is or what she plans to do. She mentioned something about how she has a friend that's a lawyer, so I guess she could be taking me to civil court. Am I legally responsible for replacing the phone? Would it be cheaper than the court cost if she did choose to take me to court? So fast forwarding into the future, there was an update. I thought I'd update you all since so many people offered advice in the original post. Brief summary of what happened. Neighborhood kid left his phone in my grass while I was mowing, and I mowed it over by mistake. The mother got upset and demanded that I pay for it. Well, she, the mother, and son showed up at my door around noon and apologized. She said that she misunderstood what happened and thought that I'd done it on purpose to teach her son a lesson about leaving his stuff in my yard. I guess he explained to her that it was his fault, which I thought was commendable for someone his age. She told me that she just stressed out about it because she's a single mother and doesn't really have the means to replace it at the moment, and that if it was anything else, she probably wouldn't have gotten so upset, but he likes hanging out with other kids, and that's how she keeps track of him. I told her about my spare phone, an iPhone 7. His was a 6S. I also took the advice of some of the commenters that it might be damaging to just give it to him and that I should perhaps have him work for it. I have a detached garage and have been needing to clean it and told her if he wanted to help me, I'd give him the phone. He instantly looked excited. I imagine he felt like he'd never get a new phone, and she acted very grateful and said he could help. He left and came back an hour later, just the son this time, and we got started cleaning. It took about 4 hours. A lot of work, but nothing too hard. He's just 12. I had a couple of cords of firewood I wanted moved out and stacked into a rack, and then a bunch of boxes I cut up and had him bag and carry to the curb. He swept, he had a Coke and a couple slices of pizza, and then he got his phone. I had to talk with him about paying attention to where his things are because it won't always work out like this. I also told him that if he wants to mow my yard every weekend and his mom says he can, I'll pay him $30 a week. It'll probably take him a couple of hours. He again acted excited at the thought of making making money, and when I asked him what he'd spend the money on, he said games. We figured out new games would be about $60, and it worked out that I'd pay him $20 for 3 weeks and then $65 on the 4th week so he could cover tax, because it might be hard for him to save. The 4th week, he'll do a little extra to cover the $5, like sweep off the porch or the walkway. I hope that I've done the right thing and I didn't make him think that everything just works out, but I did my best to have him earn it, and hopefully showed an equal measure of kindness that he will carry with him. I also didn't want the mother to stress over replacing the phone, as my mom was also a single mother, and I know how tough it can be. My son is just 2, so it was my real first opportunity to pass on some fatherly wisdom, which I hope is what I did. Was I the jerk? This ended up being way more wholesome than I expected. I can't really imagine how the whole situation could have been handled better. It was an unfortunate thing that happened, but the OP seemed to make it as much of a win-win-win for everyone involved, so nobody really got the worst possible outcome. The mother didn't have to buy a new phone, the kid not only got a phone, but was able to get some work opportunities, and the OP avoided having to go to court and also honing his fatherly skills, which seem important to him, not to mention having a new friend in the neighborhood. I think even with the OP sounding like he's a good guy, the crux of the whole thing came together when the kid actually told his mom the truth about what happened and how he didn't try to shift the blame onto the OP. He took responsibility for himself, which is what allowed the cascade of everything good that happened afterwards. So maybe that's a result of how the mother brought up the kid, or maybe the kid's just a good kid, but either way it worked out. Let me know how you would have handled this down below. Am I the jerk for not wanting to wear a Western wedding dress at my wedding? I'm a 25-year-old female and I'm set to marry my fiance, who's 26, in the fall of next year. My fiance and his family are Catholic and they're very religious. Because of this, I have agreed to a church wedding despite it not being my faith, but the one sticking point for me is what I'm going to wear. I am Japanese, while my fiance is white. I don't care if he wears a tux like he wants to, but I want to wear a shiromuku for the actual wedding and change it into an iro uchikake for the reception. My future mother-in-law is uncomfortable with this and has told me if I want to wear a veil and a dress, I should just go Western style, as it will fit in with the theme of the wedding much better and not stick out too much. My fiance has asked me if this is a sticking point for me and even suggested that I just wear the Western wedding dress and change into the iro uchikake for the reception to blend the two together. I feel I've already bent to them in having a Catholic church wedding, and that's not too out of line for me to want to use both of my traditional outfits. His mother has offered to buy me the wedding dress she thinks I should wear, and I know she likely doesn't understand why I'm so upset over this. I want to respect her traditions, but I don't feel like I'm being respected in turn. Am I the jerk here? Should I just do what my fiance has suggested and blend the two? I'm guessing that they want her to wear the Western dress and not what she wants to wear because they just want it to look a certain way, not because there's some sort of religious aspect to wearing the Western dress. One of the responses pointed out that there is no Catholic church law stating that the wedding dress must be Western/white/ etc. The only stipulation is that the clothing should be, quote, in accord with the dignity of the occasion and be respectful of those who are present, which sounds like a pretty wide range of things you can wear to meet those requirements. I can't really understand why the family would care so much if she wears what she wants to wear, other than they just had an idea in their head that they wanted to have what they considered to be a traditional wedding without any deviation to that. So if you were in this situation, let me know how you would handle it, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My girlfriend was attacked and impregnated, but I broke up with her because she wanted to keep the baby. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This is a really, really terrible situation. 2 months ago, my girlfriend was attacked in a park. More than attacked, actually. The unspeakable happened to her. She didn't want to report it, and she went into a full breakdown. She wouldn't speak to the police. She wouldn't go to the hospital. I couldn't force her, so I just stayed with her. She was obviously in a very low state since, and I've been with her, by her side, listening to her, helping her. We went to therapy, and she knows that I'm there for her. She has a history of depression, and I've been really worried. Last week, we found out that she was pregnant. I was abroad for 2 months before the attack on work and came back early to care for her, so the baby definitely is not mine. She is 100% sure it's the attackers. So we had a discussion. She is a devout Catholic and we initially decided on a termination, but after speaking to her mother, she has decided to keep the baby, saying that it isn't the baby's fault. I flat out told her that I would not help raise the baby of a guy who attacked her like this. She cried and she begged me not to leave. I told her she is the one making the choice. Either she keeps the baby and I leave, or she terminates the baby and I stay. I would not let this go. She didn't want either of those things to happen, so I told her we were done. I feel horrible. Was I the jerk? So if we fast forward into the future, there is an update. I'll post the update first since there have been some changes since last time. Then I'll respond to general points made from the last thread and a ton of the messages I received. Yesterday, I received a call from my girlfriend. She was crying and she begged me to listen to her. I told her that I still care for her and that I'll obviously listen to what she has to say. She told me that a few days after I told her we were done, she called up her mother to talk about this. Apparently what happened before was that she pretty much decided on the termination. But then when she spoke to her mother told her that under no accounts should she terminate and that I was actually manipulating her to do so. Her mother went on to say that if she terminated the child, she would no longer consider my girlfriend as her daughter. After I left, my girlfriend called her mom to talk about what went on. My girlfriend said that she desperately wanted to terminate the baby, and her mother again said that if she does do so, this will be the last time they ever speak again. My girlfriend said she broke down on the phone, and her mother kept asking what she will do. The conversation ended when my girlfriend said that she didn't know. Then she started texting. After a few hours of thinking, my girlfriend sent her mom a text saying that she was going to terminate. She was then blocked. My girlfriend then called me and told me everything. She will be having the termination in 3 weeks. I discussed this with my girlfriend and we both completely agreed that I had not manipulated her in any way and that she appreciated that I put my foot down, because had I not, she would have had a baby who would remind her of the worst time of her life. Those are her words, not mine. She further went on to say that I am the best thing that has ever happened to her and that she knew that even if she no longer had a mom, if she had me, she could get through this. I broke down at this point. I love her. In truth, I probably would have gone back to her and raised this baby with her, even though I knew I'd resent it. I made the original thread to get some backing rather than anything, to see if I had made the right decision. I'm so relieved that things turned out the way that they have. Also, down with any mother who places religion over their own child. Lunatics. Now to respond to some of the questions. Number 1. No, my girlfriend did not cheat on me. I am almost certain about this. Not only because she has the conscience of a fragile angel, but also because we know each other's schedules really well, and we often talk to friends who can corroborate things. Moreover, her roommate took photos of my girlfriend after she came home assaulted. It's not just getting the business rough, as some of you jerks put it. Number 2, I don't give a rat's butt if you think that termination is a sin or the killing of a baby. Come and raise the baby, or give us money to raise the baby, or hire us a live-in maid to tend to my girlfriend's every need while she is pregnant if you're so sanctimonious. Talk the talk, then walk the walk, you winking baboons. Number 3, my girlfriend was absolutely clear she wanted to raise the baby, probably influenced by the mom. Number 4, thanks to everyone that told me I did the right thing. It was really difficult. I'm glad it turned out the way it did. And number 5, to the people who PM me telling me I'm a monstrous baby killer, I fail to see what my hobbies have to do with this issue. So that's not everything. There is actually another fast forward in time into the future for another update that takes place after the termination. I was hoping to post here again after the termination, still scheduled for 2 weeks time, but I thought I should provide an update on some recent events from a mother from the pits of Satan's rectum. On Saturday, I answered my door and stood face to face with 2 police officers. They asked me if I was who I was, and I replied that I was. They then said that they were looking for my girlfriend. I called her over, and the police officer said that he needs to have a word with her. The officers then split, one taking my girlfriend into the living room, we let them in, and the other that took me into my bedroom. The officer who took me started asking me questions about how long my girlfriend had been there, if she had contact with anyone else, if she had left the house at all, and a few other questions. I answered, and then I asked what this was about, but the officer just said they received a report to check in on the girlfriend. I asked who reported, and the officer couldn't say. After a while, the other officer was done, and they both left. The moment they left, my girlfriend told me that she was outrightly asked if she was in danger, and that if I had been hurting her. She was also asked if she was being held against her will. She said no to everything, of course. She said that the police received a call from her mother saying saying that she might be in danger and that I could be hurting her. I was livid. I immediately said I was going to press charges against her mother. For what? I don't know. Harassment, probably. My girlfriend begged me not to and said that it would all just blow over and that she just needs time to calm down. What? She sent police to my house to get me arrested. How is that sane thinking? I could lose my job if I was arrested and charged. What was she thinking? I told my girlfriend that if her mother does anything like this again, I will definitely press charges. So my girlfriend decides on Sunday to talk to the mom to tell her not to do anything like this again. They had a conversation for about 2 minutes and then I started hearing sobs. Immediately I walked into the room and my girlfriend was crying, still holding the phone against her ear. I plucked the phone from her hand and I held it for a bit as I heard, "Hello?" from the phone, and then I put it on me and said, "You are a disgrace of a mother." And then I hung up. Then I held the girlfriend for what felt like an hour before we started talking. Apparently, the mother was telling the girlfriend how if she continues with the termination, she will never see her mother again, or her brother, or her deceased father who is in heaven, even though he died as a drunk, violent alcoholic who beat his girlfriend. But hey, repent your sins at death, am I right? Because my girlfriend was going to damnation. I told my girlfriend that if she was going to hell, then she should save me a seat, and we'd be nice and toasty together. I love her smile. What do you think, if anything, I should do about the mother? No doubt my words to her will have some reactions. Here are the answers to 2 questions people asked. Termination was never an option. My girlfriend was adamant she wanted to raise the baby influenced by her mother, and if you suggest adoption anyway, then you truly do not understand how taxing a normal pregnancy is, let alone one dipped in a beautiful cocktail of the horrific attack that she endured. And number 2, you can believe my girlfriend cheated on me if that makes you feel better about your lives, I suppose. Just for your information, the pictures and roommate's report showed that she had a bloodied nose, black eyes, cuts and bruises against her arms, hands and knees, torn coat and top, bruises around her neck. Cheating, right. And fast forwarding one final time, there is one final update after all of this. I just want to update folks on this whole saga. This will be my final update. A few days ago, the termination was carried out. During the weeks beforehand, my girlfriend went to a counselor and talked to a nurse about why she wanted the termination. She was also tested for any STIs. She's clear. She went ahead with the termination after getting the all clear. A few days ago, it was successfully carried out. They went for the surgical termination method, which involved using a vacuum to suck the pregnancy out. My girlfriend said it was pretty painless and she was able to return home after just a few hours. When she came home, she cried and cried and cried. She says she feels like a huge weight had been lifted and she can finally look to moving on with her life. We took off a whole week of work and yesterday we went camping. It rained. While in the tent, she talked about how difficult life was sometimes, but she got really glad things turned out the way that they did, because even though things were bad, she came out the other side probably stronger than before. She's amazing, man. Seriously. And as for the mom, so my girlfriend received a call from her mom who was asking if she went through with the termination. My girlfriend and I have an agreement that if her mom calls, either hang up or give it to me. In this instance, she answered, didn't know what to say, and gave it to me. I told the mom that the termination went perfectly and smiled as she cursed at me for about a minute. And then I said, "How Jesus of you," at which point she hung up. My girlfriend did not find it funny. Anyway, that's it. Good luck to everyone in their lives. Also, if you're going to message me and insult me via PM, just be warned, I've killed a baby before. So knowing everything that you know, was I the jerk? This story was very heavy and very sad, and even though the way the boyfriend writes out how things seem to have worked out, I don't know that they ever will for the girlfriend. The memories of this horrible thing happening to her are probably going to haunt her for the rest of her life. I mean, that's one of those things that for most people, you can't just get over, even if it seems like they came to a conclusion about what to do. Besides having to mentally deal with this whole situation for the rest of her life, the girlfriend is also going to have to deal with her mother cutting her out of her life, and I assume that'll take a toll of its own, because even people that don't get along with their parents still have to carry the toll of losing a relationship with their parents, whether they got along with them or not. The number one response to the entire story says, women, if you have an unplanned pregnancy, if you are considering a termination, and if your parent can be overbearing in any way or make you feel less than, please be very careful speaking to them about your condition. You have authority over your body and your future, not them or any other entity. Let me know if that's something you agree with, and if you were the boyfriend in this situation, would you stay with the girlfriend if she kept the baby? Let me know your thoughts down below. Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for refusing to have my tattoo removed even if it makes my husband uncomfortable and insecure? I was a widow for 3 years until I met my fiance, Julius. I lost my husband and 4-year-old son on a boating accident. When I got back on my feet after losing them, I had their names tattooed on my chest. Nothing grand, it's just their names in cursive and 2 hearts. When I met Julius, I told him about my past, including my depression and how I had to move back to my parents and depended on them for years. He was very understanding, and after over a year of dating, he proposed. Yesterday, while I was getting out of the shower, Julius asked me when I plan on having my tattoo removed. He said he knows someone who's really good and he could give us a discount. This was the first time he mentioned something like this to me, so I wasn't sure how to respond. I just told him I have no plans of having my tattoo removed. Later that day, during dinner, he asked me again and I told him the same thing. He said, we're about to get married and it's time for me to move on. I told him I have already moved on. He said it's hardly moving on when I still have their names on my chest that he can see every time we're intimate. He said it makes him uncomfortable and insecure of my love for him because it looks like I can't let go of my past. He's been giving me the cold shoulder since. I told my mom about what happened and she just told me that she understands how Julius feels. Am I the jerk? This is one of those situations where it shouldn't be assumed that she was just going to get rid of the tattoo. Before he proposed to her, he probably should have talked about how this tattoo made him feel. Regardless whether it's logical or not, something doesn't have to be logical for it to be real to that person who feels it. Because if he forces the issue and gets her to remove the tattoo when she doesn't naturally want to do that, that is just yet another seed of resentment that has been planted. And maybe it won't be anything in the short term, but years down the line, that seed of resentment can grow into a lot more of an issue to cascade into other problems. So realistically, it's probably going to boil down to either he is okay with it or just ends the relationship before they get married, because it already seems clear that the option of her getting it removed is not going to be without consequences. Consequences that fester and become worse and worse problems over the years. So let me know what you would do if somebody asked you to remove your tattoo that you had in dedication of your late child and partner. And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for refusing to punish my daughter for taking all the apples that my wife's folks brought from their home country? My wife Lisa has been sick for the past couple of weeks. Her folks came over to visit, they live in another country, and brought with them some gifts and a small bag of apples. I was in the backyard while Lisa was with her folks. About 30 minutes later, I hear my daughter Alex, who's 16, shouting, "Dad, Dad!" from the kitchen. I head over to the kitchen and see Alex and Lisa fighting. I asked Lisa why she was yelling at Alex, and she tells me that Alex took all of the apples that my in-laws brought from their home country and shared them with her friends upstairs. I tell her that Alex probably didn't know, but she tells me that she explicitly told Alex not to touch them. I ask Alex if that was true, and she tells me yes, but that she had friends over and couldn't find anything else edible. Lisa goes over to the fridge, opens it, saying the fridge is literally full of snacks, and Alex did this just to spite her and basically steal from her. I tell Lisa to calm down and that I'd go get her some apples from the grocery store. Lisa replies that those apples are special because they're from her home country and that she needed them for her recovery. She goes on to tell me that Alex intended to do this, and so something needs to happen. A punishment should be issued. I tell Alex to go upstairs and Lisa and I start arguing. I refuse to punish Alex because even if what she did was intentional, she's a kid and it's typical behavior. Lisa starts ranting about how this scenario keeps happening and I never take a stand, but I reply that she's just obsessed with having my daughter punished for some reason. She stops arguing now and stares at me. She then walks out and goes to stay with her folks until they'd left. Later she avoids me and refuses to speak to me. I found this whole thing quite ridiculous because Alex is just a kid, so she acts without thinking sometimes, but Lisa tends to get oversensitive and think that everyone is out to get her or something. I'm genuinely confused by her insistence to turn this into a huge deal. Am I the jerk for not punishing my daughter? daughter? Alex is 16 years old. She's not an infant. That is such a weird excuse to have for a kid who's 16. Whether or not it's typical, it's not something that is just compulsive that the 16-year-old can't help but eating these specific apples. Even from the way the OP writes it himself, it sounds like he's purposely trying to mischaracterize the wife here. I mean, he might think that the whole concept of her having apples from her home country to heal her is a little bit quirky, but it doesn't change the fact that she explicitly asked Alex not to eat these apples when there is tons of other food in the fridge, and she still chose to eat these apples. I don't think it has anything to do with being oversensitive. It has to do with logically requesting something and then somebody choosing to disregard that. But maybe you think the opposite. How do you interpret this whole situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? An entitled cop goes on a power trip and becomes belligerent with how he handles the people of the local town. When I have my experience with him, he is horrible to me, so I plot my revenge, and I execute this plan masterfully. I make him lose his badge permanently. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My wife inherited a house and land and begged me to move there. It was somewhere I knew I wouldn't have anything in either of my fields for employment, physical security specialist and force-on-force analytics and planning. But she got an offer in her field, wildlife management, at a salary that matched what we were currently making combined, along with an employment contract, which is rare in the United States, control over our own team, and insanely good benefits. Since we have no children and I am the adaptable type, and I could see that this meant a lot to her, I agreed. We put our house up for sale and we moved there sight unseen. While I am used to and even fond of it now, this place was the land that time forgot. Literally horse and buggy country. And it quickly became clear that for a while, she would have to be the sole income while I brought our new property into the modern era. The house literally had no plumbing. There was an outhouse and a manual well pump outside. We decided to buy a used house trailer, place it on the southernmost part of the property, and live in it for a while I worked on the house. I'm not from this area and the culture shock is intense. My wife had family from there and would spend a few summers there as a child with relatives, so she understood the people better than me, and being the same height and skin tone, she quickly adapted. Meanwhile, standing 8 inches minimum above everyone else and being so white that I showed up from outer space, I had a bit of a harder time, but I managed to make some friends eventually. After some time getting everything updated, we came in way under budget since I had decided to learn the skills and do all the work myself. Our immediate area was lovely, with good people and trusting neighbors. However, the surrounding counties had developed a meth/pill problem, with all the industries being strict on drug testing once the big H substance came onto the scene. People were starting to make their way out to our area for break-ins, carjackings, and even a few cases of kidnapping for ransom. A couple of senior citizens just outside of town were broken into and beaten and shot to death just for maybe $300 worth of jewelry, a couple of old guns, and their pain meds. Seeing a need in my community, I used the leftover money we had and I bought land in BFE, deemed unfit for development at a steal. The soil levels were too high for housing/farming and too remote for commercial. After getting permits/certifications and almost a year of doing all the building and earthworks myself while working at a part-time hospital security job a county over, I started a security, self/home defense, and firearms training company. I created local jobs in the nearby counties by training armed guards beyond the state's standards, helped people develop a neighborhood watch program, offered neighborhood security patrols at cost, made sure local shops got cameras, and had plans and training in place in case of robbery, and worked with individual households to develop their home defense strategies, along with offering concealed carry training, advanced firearm training, OC spray, trauma and first aid training, and other things. Somehow, without meaning to, I managed to wedge myself into a unique position where I not only trained people every day, but I got certified to be the guy that all police agencies in the region sent their officers to for state recertification and further training. It turns out before I came along, they had to send their officers almost 6 hours north to a state facility, which meant they also had to pay for a hotel room for anyone that went up there, as well as 2 meals and mileage if they didn't drive a squad car. Not to mention that the tactics they taught didn't always translate well to our area. I offered to do it for a little bit less, and given my location, no hotels or anything else were needed. For the first time in my life, I felt like my work really really mattered, that I was making a positive difference for real people, and I look forward to going into my job. In my line of work, I have ended up knowing a lot of the police in my area pretty well, and can say that I even consider a few of them to be friends. The departments I work with get quite a few officers who are new or transfers from other area, as this region of my state has a pretty median average pay grade, and a lot of officers use it as a stepping stone to get to the bigger paying areas or to get their first bit of experience and head to another state. Now, the ones who have made a life here and decided to stay learned a long time ago that the locals here don't take anything that isn't fair lightly. The people here demand justice come hell or high water. In the past, corrupt officers have been hanged or beaten to death when the court failed the citizens and didn't punish officers for doing something heinous. One shot an unarmed young person and another let a drunk/drug man die moaning in a cell after a canine unit literally ripped open his abdomen and was heard laughing and joking about it. Both essentially got a long paid vacation and then went right back to work until someone caught up with them. Even one former judge who got a slap on the wrist after being convicted of molesting children went missing and was later found bound to a tree and was apparently set on fire while he was still alive. So the older/retired officers tended to do a really good job of weeding out the bad apples and reminding newcomers that they are there to help people and protect people, not harm or bully them, which in my experience is not the case with all or even most of the officers in places I have lived before. That was all the backstory that you needed to know to understand the context of how the revenge came to be. So now on to the story. I was doing an armed guard gig during the night shift, filling in for one of my employees who had a family emergency mid-shift when a police car spotted me on a perimeter check and pulled into the lot to see who I was. I wasn't wearing a uniform. The place I was guarding received a lot of raw metals that they then melt into various alloys to be shipped off for use elsewhere. It's a crackhead's dream looting spot with the way scrap prices can be for some of the materials there. After figuring out it was me, they decided to sit and hang out a little bit with me. While talking with these officers, I listened to them share about a new hire who transferred from a larger city and they just know is going to cause trouble with the locals. They mentioned how he has that "I know better than you" attitude and thinks that the piece of metal on his chest means that he is the law. Apparently, he had already raised a bit of a stink because he writes citations for petty things that no other officer in the department has. Driving with one hand, burnt out fog light, plastic being taped over a broken back door window in a car, headlights not being on in the middle of the day while it's raining. He even tried to give a guy a DUI even though he was sitting in the car on blocks in his driveway. The car didn't even have a rear axle. Apparently, he speaks aggressively to anyone who dare interact with him if they aren't a police officer, and overall just acts like a power-tripping D-nozzle. The other officers even noticed that some of the locals have changed their demeanor towards them and seem more distrusting since this guy started, and they were genuinely worried that he would turn everyone against them. In the words of one of these officers,
"With everything in the news these days and the whole nation already being distrusting of us, I hope we can find something to set that guy straight before he ruins the reputation we work so hard to keep around here. I like that people here will just come up and talk to me. It's the main reason why I stayed here."
We brainstormed for a while about how to get through to Officer D and make him change his ways or career, but eventually came up with nothing and had to go back to doing our respective jobs like adults. 2 weeks or so after having this chat and hearing similar things for other officers I know, I got my first interaction with Officer D. I decided to be the nicest person in the world with him and see if he really is as bad as I had heard. I don't advertise my business on my work vehicle and it is completely unremarkable, but all the officers I know can spot it somehow, so I've gotten in the habit of waving anytime I pass a squad car. On my way to speak with a prospective client about a consultation for their home defense plan, this D-bag pulled me over for waving at him when we passed each other on a 2-lane highway. He slammed on his brakes, whips around in the middle of the road and came flying up behind me so close that I can't see his headlights in any of my mirrors with his flashing lights on and siren blaring. No more than 5 seconds from the initial greeting, I was enduring this frankly insulting line of questioning with his hand on his pistol grip about why I felt the need to carry a piece on me. In my state, it is required by law that anyone with a CCW/CCL has to inform the officer, and he shared his doubts that 99% of people wouldn't even know how or be able to use it, so just leave it at home. This total jerk wrote wrote me a citation for reckless operation of a vehicle, stating that he was justified in doing so because he saw me remove my hand from the wheel. Trying to be diplomatic, I said, "I just figured you would appreciate a friendly gesture from someone today. I know I like when somebody gives me a friendly wave. I didn't realize it would be an issue." This absolute insult to humanity blows his gasket, gets in my face yelling at me, threatening to haul my butt downtown and see how friendly I am when I'm hooked up in the back of his car. Says that if he felt like it, he could cost me more in impound fees and lost wages than I would make in a month. He has no clue what I do or where I work. Then he asked what I thought about that. At this point, I have an internal battle with myself, wanting to slam him to the ground and break his skull open on the asphalt to see exactly how empty it was inside. But saner thoughts prevail, and I simply handed him my lawyer's business card and stated that any further interactions we had would have to go through her. He looked at that card and threw it back at me. He called me a puss and told me to get out of his sight. Once I got moving in my car, I realized exactly how angry he had made me. I've spent years learning to keep my emotions to a minimum, since it could cost someone dearly in my line of work, and this jerk was able to boil my blood in just a few minutes. He wasn't a big guy, even for the area, and he didn't carry himself like someone who was confident of their skills. Being that aggressive and having his hand on his pistol grip for most of our interaction spoke volumes as to what kind of person this guy was. What would happen if he decided to pull someone over who didn't have my level of control and acted like that or worse? I decided that the officers I had talked to were definitely not exaggerating, and this nincompoop was going to end up getting himself or someone else killed or hurt, and something needed to be done about it. First, I went to the court and showed my dash cam video, which got my citation dismissed. I took the rest of the audio and the video to the sheriff of the county that he works for and showed it to him. Then we had a long conversation. He agreed with my assessment of this guy, but said that he couldn't really do much but reprimand him for it, and admitted that he would love to just toss him out on his butt. However, he knew that the union would fight to prevent that, and at best he would only be gone for a few days to get some training that would most likely go completely ignored. He even cautioned me against filing against him because he figured the guy was the type to take it personal, and he didn't want to see anything happen to me. He promised he would do what he could to get rid of this guy, but in most ways his hands were tied. I could tell he hoped that the guy would just move on and become someone else's problem when his minimum time was up. I couldn't help thinking that if he's causing this kind of trouble already, it is only a matter of time before someone around here loses it on this guy and swings at him. Then, even though the jerk deserves to eat his own teeth, at least, some poor guy will end up with his life ruined or worse, all because Officer D-Bag has a badge and likes to flaunt his power. Feeling as though there was nothing more I could do, I went about my business as usual for the next couple of days. Then, guess who came through my door to schedule with me for their recertification? He didn't know me from Adam and just swaggered about like he owned the place and complained about this being a waste of time and a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense. I had a real Kodak moment when I reminded him of our last interaction. He tried to excuse it as just being by the book and claimed that his hands were tied when it came to the citation, and he only acted this way because I had a firearm and he was nervous about that gun, so he needed to assert his authority over the situation. By now, I had a large portion of the people that live in my area come through for training, and most of them carry daily. Officer D-Bag just confirmed my fears for me, and I was going to do what only I could to lay those fears to rest. After all, teaching lessons was what I built my business around. Already forming a plan, I told him that I understood completely and that I operate that way as well, not even processing how that could affect him. This dum-dum seemed glad to hear that, and we sat down to get his paperwork started. The whole time we are doing this, he is bragging about how good of a shot he is and that he looks forward to the day someone wants to F around and find out with him. Hearing the way he thinks makes me both sick and angry. Yes, I carry a piece for self-defense, but I hope that I never have to use it. I spent years learning other techniques to lessen that chance after having to draw it once, and built a career teaching others what I have learned. After getting all the paperwork sorted and scheduling a time and date, he asked if he could use my range to get some practice shots in. I even waived my range fee just to see this POS shoot. After going over the range rules, I ran him at a target at 10 yards and signaled the lane hot. He fired all 17 rounds out of his mag at a rapid pace, and only about 5 managed to even hit the target, only one of which was center mass. mass. He repeated this 4 more times at varying distances, and his best score ended up being at 5 yards out with only 10 shots on the target, of which 4 were center mass. I suggested he slow his cadence a bit and asked if he wanted my advice. He told me that he's forgot more than I ever knew and to shut my mouth. And so I did. Then he proceeded to run it out 10 yards and shoot one at a time at a slow pace I usually only see from first timers, and didn't get a single center mass hit. After seeing the 13-year-old girl a few lanes down from him load up and absolutely drill headshots at 15 yards with my range master instructing her, she ended up winning quite a few high-level competitions later in life. He made some excuse about needing his sights adjusted and then packed up, and the brainless potato head left thinking we were all buddy-buddy after a few minutes later. And what happened next was insane, but that is all in part 2. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the notification for part 2. It will be in the very next video, but not the first story, so it's not going to be in the title. It will be the second story of the very next video. So have your notifications on so you don't miss it, or if it's already out, check the top line of the description to go to the video directly after this in the playlist. The most shocking thing in part 1 that they just seem to brush over pretty quickly is this entire section about vigilante justice. The OP kind of just passes over that. It doesn't make it seem like it's a very big deal, but that mini story about the children and the judge that went missing, who they later found bound to a tree and set on fire while he was alive, that's a pretty big deal to set the stage for what kind of people are living in this town. Ones that apparently will kidnap a judge and set him on fire because his punishment wasn't severe enough that he had, or if he had any punishment at all. The OP says because of this, the older and retired officers tend to do a really good job of weeding out the bad apples and reminding newcomers that they are there to help people. That's a pretty intense way to do that. So far up to this point in the story, I get that the OP has been wronged by the officer, but I'm not quite sure that the level of severity that he was wronged equals the level of severity of the revenge that is coming at the officer. It seems a little bit skewed at this point in the story, but we will see how this all unfolds in the next one. So if this was you in this specific situation, what kind of creative revenge would you concoct? Let me know down below how you would handle this. I keep meeting my birth mom, but she doesn't know that it's me. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I'm a 24-year-old male, and my mom had me when she was 14 years old, and she gave me up for adoption. My parents told me about her growing up. I still have the letter that she wrote to me that she asked if they could give it to me if they wanted. It's crazy reading it sometimes and knowing it was a literal child who wrote it, saying that she's sorry that she couldn't be my mommy, but she hopes I'm happy. She was open to having contact, but we moved for my dad's job when I was 11, and then it seemed impossible to find her. But luckily, I did. She was working at this small restaurant, and I keep going to it, but she doesn't know that it's me. Sometimes we talk, and she seems like a nice lady. Sometime when she says something like, "Do you want a refill, honey?" or uses another term like that, I want to tell her. I don't know why, it makes me nervous. We talk sometimes, and she seems really genuine. If she's not super busy, she's more open to talking about random stuff. I literally drive 2 hours to come eat at this place just to see her. And it's like she knows me already because I'm there 1 or 2 times a week for the past 3 months. So she always says hi with a big smile. But man, if only she knew. So eventually, he actually goes and tells her that he is her son. Fast forwarding into the future, this is the update. Well, I did it. I told her, and yeah, it was pretty heavy. My heart was even beating fast. I kept trying to think of how to tell her. Many of the comments in the last post mentioned writing her a letter just how she wrote a letter for me. Originally, that was the plan, but for me, I felt like I needed to say it. Before I explain it, I want to say thanks for everyone that showed support, mostly to all of the birth parents out there who shared their stories with me. That's what really helped to push me to have the courage to confront her. It meant so much. So everything happened the day before yesterday. I did wait for her to be done with her shift, and that was when they were closing the restaurant already. I waited in the parking lot. We said hi when she saw me first, but then I told her there was something serious that she needed to know. First, I told her I was sorry for keeping it from her for this long. She didn't react at all until I actually pulled out the letter. And she started bawling from there. like screaming and crying at the same time, and didn't even have to finish the whole "I'm your son" speech. She just saw it and knew. It was crazy. The next thing I know, she's hugging me instantly, but then she pulled back and asked if it's okay to hug me. Of course it is, and we're just there hugging and crying in this parking lot. It hit her hard though. Her legs gave out for a second, so I actually had to help hold her up while she's still hugging me for a minute. What really got me was her saying to me, "Look how big you got." Also, hearing her cry made me cry too. She went back to open the restaurant up. She wouldn't take no for an answer. We had coffee, ate a slice of their pie inside, and talked. We talked about so much stuff. She told me that the second time I came to the restaurant, she got a feeling, but for her, it was hard to believe that it was me. So that feeling she had was pushed way down. She told me that for years after I was adopted, she saw kids that would be my age and used to think that they were me. Then she would be crying in public. It messed with her mind a lot and made her depressed, so she didn't want to do the same when she saw me getting her hopes up like that. She says I look so much like my biological dad when he was younger though. We talked about him too. They stayed in contact with each other in case I ever reached out to one of them, so it would be easier to contact the other. I didn't have any hope of finding my biological dad since he was never mentioned, so I'm glad they both planned for this future scenario. She told me about how they wanted to keep me, especially my biological dad. He didn't want me to be adopted, but he knew they had to because they were just kids. It took him a long time to get past it after I was born, she told me. That's why he didn't leave anything, because he didn't want to believe he might not see me again. We talked for hours till almost 2 o'clock in the morning. They closed at 11 p.m. She just wanted to know everything about me, but her main thing was, am I happy? Were my parents good to me? Did I have a happy childhood? And I did. I told her, thank you for helping to give me this life that I have. We both cried again. She cried the most. Everything was very emotional for her. Sometimes she would look really happy, but then get sad again. After my 18th birthday, she was hoping I would find her, and that's why she stayed in the same city. But since I didn't, she always thought that maybe I resented her, or that I wasn't told that I was adopted, or maybe had decided it was better not to have her around. It made me feel bad for not telling her sooner. She told me it's not my fault and I did right going at my own pace. Honestly, she's so sweet. The way she kept looking at me with the biggest smile, it made me emotional sometimes. It makes you think, how can someone who's been a total stranger your whole life look at you with so much love? It's wild. We learned so much about each other. She kept asking if we could have dinner soon to keep talking, and if at some point in the future I'm interested to come over to her house and I can meet her husband. That all sounded really great. We exchanged phone numbers, and after I left, she sent a text telling me thank you for giving her this gift and that she didn't know if it would ever come. My girlfriend came over and she hugged me while I cried. I wasn't sad, by the way. These were happy tears. Everything went better than I expected. There was still emotionally heavy stuff, but I'm still glad that we got to open up to each other. So, where do you think I should go from here? The whole idea that there are people out there who don't even know you at all, but still love you just because you're you, is amazing, especially when you consider that there are people in your life that you've known since you were born, and they've known where you were your entire life and could not care less whether you were alive or not, let alone what your interests are or what has been going on in your life. The birth mom in the story here had the baby so incredibly young, and the part that was really striking to me was when the OP mentioned the letter from the 14-year-old mom who said that she was sorry she couldn't be your mommy. It was really just one kid writing to another kid. It was also surprising to see the level of gratitude that the OP had when he told the birth mom how much he appreciated the fact that she gave him a good life by giving him to this family that has taken such good care of him and loved him for all of these years. Man, this one was very good. It was very uplifting. I hope the OP and the birth mother are able to keep each other in their lives for good. It sure sounds like that's what's going to happen. If any of you guys have ever read the Steve Jobs biography, there's something similar to this that happens in that book. It's been many years since I've read that, so this is not going to be 100% accurate, but more or less what I remember happening is once Steve Jobs becomes famous and successful, he ends up going to this restaurant that he really likes a lot. If you guys don't know, Steve Jobs was also adopted. He always goes to this particular restaurant, and eventually he reconnects with his sister. And his sister finds their biological dad. And the dad, when he's explaining his life to his sister, because he hasn't seen her in a long time, says, I have a restaurant now, and I even have Steve Jobs as one of my customers. Not knowing that the person that he was so proud to tell his newly found biological daughter that frequented his restaurant was his own son. I remember when I originally read that, it kind of blew my mind. But like I said, it's been years, so I'm sure I mixed up some details there. If any of you guys have read that book, feel free to add any additional information to the comments. I'm sure most of you guys know this by now, but remember, if you guys have stories of your own, you can always submit them via the bottom link of the YouTube description on Am I the Jerk? Not everything will make it into the video, but you never know. So if you were in this situation and you ended up finding your biological parents and they didn't know it was you, how would you handle it? What would you do? And what would you tell the OP to do? Let me know down below. Here's some backstory for this one. The OP runs a business to get police officers trained and certified for the local county. While trying to be friendly to a cop passing by, the OP waves at him and the police officer goes nuts, completely overboard on a power trip, pulls over the OP and humiliates him, issuing him a ticket for waving because he took one hand off the steering wheel. Then, in the future, that same cop has to come in for certification training. He explains that he was just going by the book. And now that cop thinks that he's buddy-buddy with the OP. But the OP has already planned out his elaborate revenge. And that is the recap of what's happened so far. To hear the full thing, click the playlist at the top of the description and check out the video right before this one. So here is how the revenge goes down. The state certifications are a bit simple, so when I started doing this, I met with local union lawyers, training officers, and some reps for our area, and we came up with a standard that surpasses the minimum state requirements, which they in turn use to negotiate better benefits so everyone wins. The standards we decided on not only test for accuracy, but also introduces a bit of real-world problem solving that the officers have to contend with. The first is done in full duty gear, with both hands on the piece at 10 yards. After running 25 yards within 2 minutes, you have to be able to draw your piece from crouch cover, fire 10 rounds, reload a magazine loaded by me with a false round randomly placed in it to cause a malfunction, clear that malfunction, and get 10 more rounds on the target from standing cover. The second is the same drill but in reverse, but done with only one hand on the piece and in under 3 minutes. In both of these drills, 15 of the 20 shots must be within the number 8 ring of the target and all rounds must hit the target. And the third is a dot torture drill that must be cleared at 90% within 10 minutes and you have 3 attempts at it. It doesn't sound too tough if you're an avid shooter, but trust me, under pressure, with your job in the balance, it can be rough. See, the policy around here is that the county pays for your first test, and if an officer fails to recertify, then they either choose 2 weeks unpaid leave or sit at the office and do paperwork at a reduced pay for 2 weeks. Then they have to pay out of pocket to try again. Of course, it is encouraged that they come to me for help, but being that I am not a charity, some choose to practice on their own, which is fine. If they fail a second time, the sheriff can cut them loose without any issues from the union, and the officer has to wait 1 year to even be considered for rehire or relocate to a different area that doesn't have these standards, or the sheriff orders them to come to my training, and I work with them until we know they will pass. After that second failure, the officer's job lies entirely in the hands of their boss, being that these tests are a bit tasking for most shooters, and even though I log way more range time than any officer I know, it helps when you own the range, I can still occasionally fail the dot torture drill. I will show mercy for most of them if they seem like a decent person who's just out of practice or nervous, and not to be a jerk when it comes to scoring if they are close to a failing score. Counting line breaks as hits when I don't have to, forgetting to hit the stopwatch button if their cadence is just a second or two slow. I decided the moment he signs the papers that there would be no such mercy for this D-bag. I fully expected him to burn through ammo practicing at home after his last performance, and while I doubted anything was actually wrong with his sights, I wasn't willing to risk being wrong there when I had such a golden opportunity to do some true community service. I even bought a new set of digital calipers, deciding that if he was so much as 1/10 of an inch off on any shot placements at the line, I would mark them as a miss and prove that I was just going by the book. My mind was made up that since I couldn't get this guy off the force completely, I would go by the book and at least get him off of any of the people that were close around me, and he would have to perform like an absolute pro to avoid it. The day finally comes where he has to test, and he shows up wearing shorts and a tap-out t-shirt with only his piece and duty belt empty of everything else. No vest, no range bag, no radio, no eye or ear protection, no cuffs, OC spray or taser. Not a thing that he knew he was supposed to have. After pointing out these issues, he huffs and says,
"Well, I brought everything that's important. Let's just get this over with."
Mind you, I could have failed him right then and there for non-compliance. I had a copy of his signature on the paperwork stating that he owned all required gear and would bring it with him for the test, and that he would be dressed to listed standards on testing day. But that just wouldn't have been satisfying enough for me. I wanted to make absolutely sure that anyone who looked into it would see that he himself was the failure, that this loudmouth bolstering piss stain wasn't fit to the standards of his peers, and his mother shouldn't have had him 25 years ago and done society a favor. Not that he failed due to circumstantial or bureaucratic nonsense beyond his control. I let the clothing slide and loaned him some rental safety gear, which he complained about wearing but eventually put on. After getting it all sorted and noting all this in his charts, I let him take his test. And wow, am I glad that I did. If he hadn't made me see him for the turd that he is, I would have felt sad for him. As it stands, I worried I may develop muscle issues from holding back my grin. He failed the first test immediately due to sheer ineptitude. When the buzzer sounded, first he tripped over his own feet and ate the ground face first, full scorpion. Then after getting up and continuing while drawing from crouch, he somehow managed to catch his front sight or barrel on his holster opening and sent his piece tumbling through the dirt. Then fell over when he tried to lean over and get it. Losing control of it is an instant test stop, so I sounded the buzzer. Holding back laughter and putting on my plate carrier instead of just a level 3 vest in case this fool fired a random round my way, I gave him a second chance even though I already had what I needed. Mostly because I wanted to have irrefutable proof that he failed on his skills, not accidental circumstances. While he managed to keep hold of it this time, he struggled to clear his misfire, costing him too much time for his slow cadence earlier, and only 2 shots were in the number 8 and 4 completely missed the target. For the first time ever, someone had failed the first test on all 3 metrics. I have had people come to me for the first time who have never shot before or with a legitimate fear to overcome who could outperform this arrogant jerk waffle. After listening to him try to make excuses, complain, demand, and then beg for me to give him another chance, I told him that I couldn't and he failed. That my report was getting sent in and he would have to talk to his training officer and we could go from there. He exploded in anger and started calling me anything he could think of, claiming I was only doing this because of the ticket that he gave me, part of why I wanted so much proof. And then cursing me in some honestly creative ways while slamming his fist into my wall like a petulant tween. And then he told me he was going to
"Make sure you regret this,"
while pointing at me and my staff in the other room. By now, a couple of my regulars, my range master and the local brass goblin, have all made it over to watch through the window and listen to the exchange. Knowing I have him on camera with the audio punching a hole in my wall, and I have witnesses, a new thought came to me when I heard him say this, and I decided to steer him just the way I wanted him to go. All I had to do was ask if what he said was a threat, and this dum-dum responded with,
"You bet your booty it is,"
and to my surprise reached out and gave me a shove. I sidestepped him and he stumbled past, which pissed him off even further. I told him then and there to get the F off my property and that he wasn't welcome back. I looked at this sack of poop straight in the eye and informed him that he just sealed his fate now, since at this point he would have to beg to be sent to the other facility, and I would make certain my report recommended he never work as an officer again. And should they ignore my advice, I would be raising my prices to better reflect the training they get here. He then decided to spit at me and swing at me this time, not want to miss an opportunity, and easily outweighing him by 50 to 60 pounds. I raised my guard, and the moment his arm made contact with mine, I used his momentum and my muscle to send him over my shoulder and directly into the ground with all I could muster. I channeled my ancestors and the ancient gods of their homeland into that throw, fully intending to leave a wily coyote-esque crater in my floor. Rolling him onto his back and then sitting atop him in full mount position, I watched a wannabe tough guy try to remember how to breathe after meeting the ground that hard and immediately cry like a little baby and beg for his life. life. When he looked past me to see my range master, a 310-pound, 6'6", tatted up retired Marine with our less lethal training shotgun. It is bright green, kind of unmistakable as less lethal in one hand, leveled to Officer D-Bag's head and his phone in the other, already talking to the guy's boss. Apparently my range master had been watching everything from his office on the security feed, and when Officer D started punching walls, my boy immediately picked up the phone and called the sheriff, grabbing the shotgun on his way out as he came to us. When all was said and done, I got to watch him get hauled off my property by his boss in cuffs and read his rights, since yes, I will be pressing charges. He assaulted me, threatened me and my employees, damaged my property, and I had all the evidence I needed to prove it. Later, when I asked my range master why he brought the green piece into play, since the guy wasn't really a threat, he reluctantly told me that he brought it for me. Apparently, in all of the times we have known each other, he had never seen me come unglued like that. He said, "Boss, you're the kindest and quietest man I know. And in my experience, when a man like you gets angry, even the devil himself would piss his pants to get away." He admitted that his plan was to nail me with a beanbag or two if he needed to, and try to turn my attention to him. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't happy to know that I had made my friend feel that way, but it did feel good in an odd way to have a certified badass feel like he needed a tool to stand against me. I gave the man a raise for his honesty and willingness to protect others, no matter the cost to himself. After all, that's a rare quality, and it should be rewarded. And to this day, I refuse to spar with him because I never want him to 100% know that he could take me without it. Despite all the evidence and testimony against him, Officer D-Bag ended up getting a pretty good plea deal, but he will never be able to be a police officer or legally own a firearm again, so I consider it a win. His wife filed for divorce for domestic violence while he was awaiting his court date, and thankfully they had no children together, so it was granted without issue, and he has no rights to see her kid. He moved away immediately after his hearing, and the last I heard, he makes minimum wage working at a gas station somewhere up north. Was I the jerk? I just can't believe that the cop didn't practice after that horrible failing of his previous attempt in the range. Or maybe he did, and this is as good as it got. In the end, the OP's very meticulous plan for revenge didn't really even need to be pushed any further. He thought he was going to have to use digital calipers to measure the distance to prove that he was off, but the guy failed all three of the tests back to back to back. Probably the most surprising part of the entire thing was the fact that the cop exploded and assaulted the OP while knowing he was on camera. If he loses his temper in a situation like that, I can't even imagine how he would be out in the field. So let me know how you would have handled this situation. Was it too much? Was it too little? What would you have done? Let me know down below. My entitled aunt convinced my sister to buy her house for $1 million with assurance that not much renovation was needed. It was all a lie, and the renovation cost about $300,000. After my sister and her husband finished this massive renovation, my entitled aunt came back and wanted to buy the entire house back for $300,000, which is $1 million less than they put into this house to begin with, when you combine the renovation cost with the $1 million that they put in to buy it. So she sold it for a lot, it got renovated up to perfection, and then she wanted to buy it back for way less than she sold it for. Here's how it went down. Make sure to subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. First, let me describe what kind of aunt we have. This aunt, or entitled aunt I should say, of ours has been the source of headache for us as a family emotionally and monetarily. She would always ask my mom and dad for a loan that would take years for her to pay. Where these loans would go is one of our biggest questions to date. And whenever my mom or eldest sister would ask her for the payment, she would always play the "I'm family" card and be all emotional in order to play my mom's emotions. My mom has a soft spot with her family, and she would most likely let it slide, but not my eldest sister. She would constantly remind and warn my aunt to pay her debts or she'll do something about it. My aunt would then turn to my mom asking for protection from my sister, to which my mom would talk to my sister about it. My sister, though, is not having it and is just relentless on her pursuit of making my aunt pay her debts. This got to the point where my aunt was warned that she would sue my sister if she doesn't stop, to which my sister openly invited. My sister works at a law firm, so she knows the law, and that our aunt has no case at all. Ultimately, our aunt paid, but not without any parting words of how our family are a bunch of, quote, rude people, and that she would, quote, never talk to us again and such. But after a month or so, she made up with my mom and everything was well except for my eldest sister. So for context, my aunt put her house up for sale due to her children moving out. She had 2 daughters who are all married now. Initially, she said that the house was getting too big for me to keep/maintain and that she'd plan on buying a nice condominium near the downtown area. Her house is a 30 to 45 minute drive from downtown. My uncle didn't want her to sell it to someone they do not know or at least does not have an affinity to. So she suggested to sell the house to a relative or a super close friend. My aunt then talked to my youngest sister. I have 3 sisters and I'm the only guy, and pitched her the idea of buying the house from her. At first, my sister didn't really want to entertain the idea of buying a house at this point in time as they have 2 kids that they are sending to a not so cheap school, but my aunt then pulled the sentimental value card and that it would be a shame if the house was sold to someone else. Admittedly though, the house did have sentimental value for us siblings and cousins. We used to spend our summers over there as it's in a pretty nice neighborhood and we have friends there as well. A basketball court is fronting the house, which is a win-win situation since they both have boys and her husband is a good basketball player. My aunt saw this as an opportunity for the boys and her husband to train or whatever. To my aunt's credit, she did have a nice pitch to my sister, so I gotta give her that. My sister and her husband discussed this at length. It literally took about a month before they had their decision. My sister and her husband decided to buy the house as they have long planned to have a house of their own. But her husband's grandmother begged them to stay at the current house they're living in until his grandmother can return back as she was sorting something out from a different city. So they decided to have it leased until they were ready to move. My eldest sister, who by the way was against all of this, helped with all of their contract and legal stuff so that they can cover all of their bases. The details of the sale aren't really familiar to me, but if memory serves me right, the house and the lot was sold for more or less 1 million pesos. My sister gave my aunt a more than generous amount of time to move out, 6 months. When the time came that everything was moved out, my sister and her husband decided to pay a visit to their recently bought house and see to what extent the renovation would be. And to their surprise, the condition of the house was horrible. The walls and ceiling were falling apart. The tiles on the floor were chipped or starting to get chipped. The main bedroom was a mess and the kitchen smelled like someone died in there and was left for weeks. Although my aunt did disclose that, quote, some renovation work would be needed, she never disclosed that the house was this messed up. But whatever, they decided to have the house renovated and it cost them another 300,000. Once the renovation was done, the difference was night and day. As they were not moving into the new house yet, they listed the house for lease on some places and it garnered a lot of interest. The house was then leased to a foreign couple. The transaction went smoothly with the help of my eldest sister once again, and the couple even paid full price for the whole duration of the lease. Everything was as smooth as butter until yesterday. My sister got a call from the couple who leased the house early in the morning when she was dropping off the kids to school. This was on a Monday and my sister is usually super busy on these days, and this was one of those days. She answered the call and the following conversation ensued. This is all from my sister's retelling of the events/conversations, so here it is. The guy who called my sister was the nice husband who had the nice wife, we'll refer to them as that, and so my sister answered the phone and said, "Hello, nice husband, haven't heard from you in a long time. May I know why you called?" Nice husband says,
"There's someone at the gate claiming this is our house."
My sister, confused, says, "Huh? She might just be a crazy person roaming around this area." Nice husband said,
"Well, no. She showed me pictures of the house and her in it."
At this point, my sister kind of knew what was happening, so she hurriedly drove down there. She was coming from a different side of town, so it took her about an hour to get there. When she got there, she saw my entitled aunt outside screaming to let her in. The neighbors were already out and witnessing the commotion. My entitled aunt sees my sister and hurriedly runs over to her.
"Sister, they won't let me in."
She points towards a nice couple. "Entitled aunt, what are you doing here?"
"Well, this was my house once. Am I not allowed to enter?"
"What do you mean?"
"I sold you this house, do you remember? And now someone else is living here."
"Well, they're leasing the house."
"What? Why would you lease the house to someone I don't know?"
My sister started getting angry and said, "Because this is my house. I can lease it to whoever I want." At this point, my sister couldn't believe the stupidity of this situation and was getting kind of embarrassed with the neighbors looking on. So she told my entitled aunt to go inside so they could discuss this. Once they were in the house, my sister introduced my entitled aunt to the couple who leased the property and the following conversation ensued.
"So, how much do you lease the house for?
The nice husband said,
Excuse me? I said, how much do you pay for the lease?
The nice wife said,
I'm sorry, but we don't see the need of discussing that to you. Why not?
She turns to my sister and asks,
How much are they paying for the lease?
my sister says, it's none of your business. This is my property and I'm already generous enough to have let you in.
What? I sold you this beautiful house and you treat me this way?
She looks at the couple again.
Was the house sold to you too? Tell me.
The nice husband laughs and says,
Look, lady, even if we did buy it, we don't need to tell you the specifics since we're not dealing with you. And no, we didn't buy this house. That's nasty. You're a liar.
she faces my sister and says,
I'll take my house back now.
excuse me, are you out of your mind? My sister said, but my entitled aunt replied,
No, I'm not, and it's clear to me you're an irresponsible homeowner.
she took something out of her bag.
Here, take this 300,000 pesos and give me back my house.
300,000 pesos? Seriously? She slammed the money into my entitled aunt's chest. My sister is fuming at this point. You need to leave my property right now. I won't allow you to disrespect me in front of these nice people. 300,000 when we bought this house from you for 1 million?
You can't kick me out of here. This is my house.
My sister grabs her phone and said, I'm calling the cops now. My entitled aunt bolted out of there. On her way out, she screamed,
I'll come back for you and take this house. This is not the end of this.
After my entitled aunt was nowhere to be seen, my sister broke down, crying in front of the nice couple. The couple asked her a few of the details about my entitled aunt, and they were super understanding. My sister offered to return about a fourth of the total money they paid for their lease, but the couple said that it's not necessary. My aunt's husband knew what happened, and he was furious to a point that he almost went down to the condominium where my entitled aunt was living. But my sister was able to calm her husband down before anything bad happened. As of now, my sister and her husband are seeking legal advice from my eldest sister and her firm. Here's the update from the future if you want to see how this all played out. Hey guys, really sorry to update this super late. Why? Well, on the day that I was going to post an update, I had severe food poisoning and had to stay in the hospital for a week. I was discharged last Friday, so I'm posting this now. Some of you are asking why my sister and her husband didn't check the house before actually purchasing it. Well, they actually did, but my aunt apparently had amazing skills in hiding the flaws of the house. They didn't see it before it was too late. Admittedly though, the check wasn't really thorough since they are a very busy couple managing multiple businesses / work and stuff. Add to the fact that they basically pick up and drop off their kids to and from school all the time. They're already cramping a lot of things in their otherwise busy everyday schedule. A day after the incident, the nice couple who leased the house met with my eldest sister in the law firm that she works at. They discussed what their options are in case our crazy aunt pulls that stunt again, but they didn't want to file a restraining order at the time. My sister suggested, if ever our aunt strikes again, that they call the police and my sister. My eldest sister also informed my younger sister to prepare any legal documents showing that the property was hers. As this was happening, my uncle, who talked to my aunt the day the incident happened, spoke to my mom and told her everything our crazy aunt did before and after the house was sold and what happened a day before. The story gets pretty crazy here, so I'll provide some bullet point summaries on the most important information of the whole conversation. First off, I was wrong in the assumption that my aunt bought a condominium. Instead, she bought a new house with a popular house and lot developer here, Camella Homes. Before the house was even sold, my entitled aunt was able to somehow convince her eldest daughter into buying a new house with her and that they'd split the cost once the house was sold. After the house was sold to my sister, my crazy aunt spent almost half of it buying new furniture / appliances. The crazy part about this is that most of the furniture appliances in their old house were still very usable or even in crisp condition that my uncle was boggled as to why she would buy new ones. Her reason was new house, new things. Talk about practicality. Where did the other half of the money go? Well, she went on and treated her friends to fancy restaurants and clubs. Here's the kicker. She paid diddly squat on the new house that she's living in. Now, there was still some money left over after all of that spending, and when it came time that she would pay for her part of the house, she casually told her daughter that it has been spent with new stuff for the house. And when asked where the not so old stuff was, she just said,
Well, I give it all away to my friends.
When pressed if it was given or sold, she said,
I gave them away. I can't sell stuff to my old friends, old stuff.
Now obviously, her daughter got upset with all of this and threatened to no longer pay unless she pays her part. My entitled aunt then played the you ungrateful bee card to her daughter and surprisingly turned the tables around. I really don't know how she did it, but she did it. As mentioned earlier, there was some money left over, but it wasn't much, and my entitled aunt heard of this investment scheme that is quite honestly too good good to be true. This investment scheme promised a 30% return on your initial investment per month. I don't really know much about it, but there's some articles about this great scam and I highly recommend reading about it. As a side note, that article is titled Explainer How the Kappa Ministry Took Advantage of Its Investors. The Kappa Ministry merges religion and social media to orchestrate one of the biggest investment scams in Philippine history. As it turns out, the remaining money, over 50,000 pesos, was invested in this scam. And when the news broke that this scam was being stopped by the government, my uncle claimed that my entitled aunt went crazy and started having temper tantrums out of nowhere. Even her friends became victims of this sudden outburst she was having, that she was somehow banned indefinitely on her Zumba group. The 300,000 pesos that she had on hand was not from the investment scam that she put herself into, but from her daughter for advance payment of the house. My uncle said that when she got a hold of the money, she quickly went through the old house she sold, and the rest is history. As of this time, the new house was apparently sold / assumed to one of her friends, and my entitled aunt moved to Japan to her daughters. I just hope my cousin will be able to keep her sanity after all of this and the struggle brought down upon her by her mom. So what would you do? After seeing the update to this whole situation, it seems like the entitled aunt had some sort of gambling problem or something. She kept trying to spend her money in a crafty way and then take it and do something else with it and then not honor other agreements. I mean, she made the first agreement to sell the house and then wanted to buy it back, but only with the money that she had. In the first part of the story before the update, we didn't know that that money was an advance from the sister to buy the new place. We thought it was from the original sale of the house to begin with. So not only did she spend all of the money, she was in a negative situation because that wasn't even her money that she was trying to buy the house back with in the first place at all. That was supposed to be towards the new place that she was going to go half and half with. That whole investment scam that they brought up in the update seems like it was a really big deal in the Philippines, and I'm guessing a lot of people got burned because of it. She probably thought that she was really clever and was going to make a bunch of money off of it, but anything that promises you to make 30% of your principal investment per month, you should probably be wary of. Most legitimate investments won't make straight up guarantees for something like that, where you're just making 30% right out the gate every single month off your principal. That doesn't even make any sense. It sounds like this is probably going to be a permanent fracture in the family, but from the perspective of the OP and everyone involved, they probably want it to be that way. It sounds like they don't want any more interactions in the future with this entitled aunt, especially now that she's moved away to Japan. Am I the jerk for not donating my kidney to my evil twin brother due to him being awful to me my entire life, having an affair with my girlfriend, getting her pregnant, and then outing me and convincing my family to disown me because I'm bi? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My name is Ryan, and my twin brother Sebastian and I have never been close. In fact, he made life hell growing up, and my parents didn't help by playing favorites, getting him better stuff on our birthday, only going to see films that he liked at the cinema, giving him extra money for housework despite us doing the exact same amount of work, and he would always put me down, belittle me, bully me with his friends at school, break my stuff, and then blame me in general. It was all a pain. Growing up, the only people I knew to rely on were my older sister Jane, my cousin Kai, and my best friend Isaac, who all knew what an awful person my brother was. Anyway, cut to when I was 17 years old and I had my first girlfriend, someone that I loved very much. We didn't do the deed because she wanted to wait until her 18th birthday, but it turns out she was having an affair with my twin brother behind my back for half the time we were together, and only got caught when it was revealed that she was pregnant. I was crushed. She knew how much I hated my brother and saw some of the awful things that he did to me, but she still went and did that. Cheating is bad enough, but to do it with him, of all people? When I slugged him in the face, his nose broke and made him lose a tooth, but according to my parents, I'm the one in the wrong, and now we have to help this girl who is carrying my twin brother's child, and we have to help support them. My brother then said that he had no intention of being a father and told my girlfriend to terminate. She then ran out of town and I never saw her again. I don't know if she had the baby or terminated. All that I know was that she was gone and my folks were still praising my brother as the golden child. I was still the black sheep and a failure as usual. Another year goes past and me and my brother still despise each other, but I had started dating again. It was a long while, but I finally found someone, a boy that I liked. I am bi, and this new guy Daniel that I had met at college caught my eye. He was deaf and I studied sign language out of boredom, so we got talking and things seemed to just click. click. We date, we fall in love. I bring him to my friend Isaac's party to introduce him to my friends, and everything feels great. At this point, the only one who knew that I was bi was Isaac, but one day, walking into a cinema, I was holding my boyfriend's hand. I bump into my evil twin. He points, laughs, and says some phobic remarks. I tell him to bug off, and I go see a movie with my arm around my boyfriend. When I got home after dropping my boyfriend off, I knew I'd be facing something as I walked through the front door. I saw both of my parents on the sofa. My mother was crying about how on earth she could have given birth to someone so disgusting. Was it too much to hope that she saw the light and was talking about my brother? But no. She was talking about me and how I'm a stain on our family's name. My father gets up to yell at me, spout phobic remarks and slurs. At this point, I see my brother up the staircase with a grin on his face. He then comes down and says that he is uncomfortable with sharing a room with an F slur, and my folks kick me out right then and there. With what little clothes and money I had, I went to Isaac's house, and his family took me in, where I stayed for 6 months, actually experiencing familial love and affection. And Isaac's mother and stepdad, I consider to be my own parents now. Eventually, me, Daniel, and Isaac all get a 2-bedroom flat together, and all is good for the time being. So, cut to December last year. Me and my boyfriend, now husband, Daniel, were married. Isaac was my best man. My sister and cousin Kai walked me down the aisle. I have a brilliant job in graphic design, and I have my own house by the sea, and life has never been better. However, I get a call from my sister that my brother was in the hospital. I hadn't thought about him much over the 9-year period since I was kicked out, but being reminded of his existence brought up a lot of painful memories for me. I was told by my sister that Sebastian wanted to see me and that it was urgent. So I went to the hospital that he was in, and I met my sister outside the front entrance. I ask her what this is all about, but she doesn't tell me, and that I need to ask my twin. So I arrive to where my brother is, where my parents are at his side, and my folks actually look happy to see me, as if what they did to me hadn't happened. And Sebastian also looked really pleased to see me. It's safe to say something was off. Eventually, I ask, what's going on? And why was I even here? To which my brother tells the family to leave us two alone. He looks so much weaker than before. He used to intimidate me so much. He told me that he was dying from kidney failure and has been for the past few years, but now he didn't have long left to live. I knew immediately where this was going. He then said he always regretted that we never got along, at which point I told him no. He looked confused and asked what I was on about, so I simply told him I was not going to donate my kidney to save him. He looked as if I had just pooped in his food. He then went on about how bad the situation was and that he was really sorry for all the things we did to each other growing up. Excuse me? That we did to each other? I told him I just wanted a brother growing up that cared and loved me, who wouldn't try to break me every day for 18 years. He then called in our mom and dad and told them that I wasn't going to give up my kidney. They started to spout off that I owed them for my existence and that I have a duty to look after family. I asked them, where was that duty when they kicked me out of the house? Or where was that duty every time my brother gave me a black eye? Or their duty to look after their grandchild when Sebastian decided that he didn't want to be a father? I said for all the things that he has done, from outing me to having an affair with my girlfriend and getting her pregnant, then abandoning the child that was his. This was the universe's and my way of finally giving back what he dished out to bite him in the butt. I then turned around and walked out of the room, having that be the last time I ever saw Sebastian again. I'm not sure why they'd want an F slur's kidney anyway. I walked past my sister, who gave me a look. I gave her a look back, who then, in turn, gave me a look that said, I understand, after leaving the hospital. I felt great, as a weight had been taken off my shoulders. I went home and I never looked back, pleased with my decision. Now, last week, I got a call from my sister, calling to inform me that Sebastian, my twin brother, has died. She asked if I was okay, and I said that I was, that I didn't really feel anything at all, honestly. She said she understood to a degree, as Sebastian hadn't been all that kind to her over the years either. I had my husband and Isaac there to support me. Honestly, at this point, Isaac may as well be our adopted child, since his living with us till this whole situation with the world is over. The next day, I was getting calls and texts from family members I hadn't spoken to in years, telling me that I was going to hell for being being a bad son, being a bad brother, and for being an F-slur, and that me and my husband don't deserve children. My hubby and I have been looking into adoption and surrogacy. This makes me second guess my choice of not giving my brother my kidney. Even in death, he's making things harder for me. I did wonder if I was a bad person and if I made the wrong decision, but I knew that if I was in that position, I would have been left for dead. Forget him. Here are a few other bits of information that may clear some things up. Number 1, his renal failure was from living a hardcore lifestyle of substances and drink. Number 2, my folks and sister did get themselves tested to see if they're matches and none of them were. Number 3, I disowned them from being my family years ago, apart from Jane. So when I got married, I took my husband's last name and hyphened it with Isaac's last name, to which his folks were very pleased about. Number 4, some family, Kai's folks and my dad's brother, have actually called to see how I'm doing and say that they don't judge me for what happened. Others, however, have continued with said treatment of me, whom I've now blocked. Number 5, if he had been a good brother throughout my life, I'd have done it without a second thought. I'd have done the same for Jane, Kai, Isaac, and my husband, but I felt that he didn't deserve it. And finally, number 6, it's unlikely that I will ever see my parents again, and I'll make sure my children will never meet them. My revenge to them will be being a better parent than they ever were. With all that said, was I the jerk? This was a heavy one. After all these years of not talking to each other, the OP goes back to his twin and the family, maybe thinking that they wanted to set things right or they wanted to rebuild a relationship or something, but no, they wanted his kidney. And I absolutely understand when you're at that level of desperation where you need the kidney, you're going to talk to whoever you got to talk to, even if you don't like them. But I think what set the OP over the edge to make the easy decision no is that the twin brother tried to rewrite history by saying that the things we did to each other, which seemed like the exact moment that the OP said, oh no, that is not going to happen. We're not going to rewrite history to be that, since that's not how he sees it at all. There were some people that left comments about the old saying of blood is thicker than water and how that actually has a completely opposite meaning of its original meaning. There was a comment that said, blood is thicker than water comes from a 12th century German proverb where the original version means the complete opposite. The original saying is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So it's interesting that over time that phrase has completely changed its meaning to mean the opposite of what it originally said. I'm not sure how accurate this history is, but it's interesting to think about. I think for many people, if their twin sibling died because of not giving them an organ, they would probably be riddled with guilt for a long, long time. But as far as things went with the OP and his relationship to the family, it was bad enough that he felt okay with it after hearing about the death, it sounds like. The only final question I have about this whole thing is what happened to the baby? Since they're twin brothers, I'm assuming identical twin brothers, I believe that baby is genetically the same thing as being his own child. I kept thinking in this story that we were going to figure out what happened to that baby or was going to play a role and come back in, but we never saw what happened. So let me know what you would do if you're in this situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law that I wouldn't sleep with him even if my life depended on it in front of his friends and family? I'm a 24-year-old female and I got proposed to 2 months ago. My fiance Jax, who's 28, has a younger brother Jacob, who's 23, who I went to college with. When I was in college, I slept around a lot and was pretty known for that. My fiance knew this, and so did his brother. Jacob was a bit of a jokester, so he liked to bring it up frequently at family gatherings, birthdays, holidays, etc. My fiance and his family often told him to stop when they saw that I was uncomfortable with it. Last night it was Jacob's birthday dinner. Me, my fiance, and a lot of his friends and a few younger family members were there. Jacob started getting more and more sloshed and started cracking unfunny jokes. Some included saying how he was surprised that I never took the chance to do the deed with him in college. Being fed up and a little bit sloshed myself, I told him I wouldn't sleep with him if my life depended on it. He got pissed and then kept silent. The dinner was awkward for the rest of the time. My fiance said, and some of his family said, that I didn't do anything wrong, and they even have been waiting for me to tell him that. This morning I woke up to a bunch of texts from Jacob telling me I'm a floozy and a B. I didn't do anything wrong, but my friends requested that I get some opinions. So, am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law that I wouldn't sleep with him even if my life depended on it in front of his family and friends? How did anyone in this family family allow this to go on for this entire time. So this whole time through birthdays, family gatherings, holidays, they all just sat back and watched Jacob say stuff like that to this OP. It's kind of hard to imagine that nobody shut him down this entire time, and it had to get to the point where she had to have liquid courage in order to reach her breaking point and say something that wasn't even that intense. It was just a fact. And that little nudge is getting him to the point that he's so upset about the situation. It's the true definition of somebody who dishes it but can't take it. Except that she did that defensively in reaction to what he's saying. She wasn't going out and provoking him. So if you were in this situation and your brother was saying stuff like this to your wife, how would you handle it? And let me know, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for not carrying on my family's tradition? I'm an 18-year-old female, and my family has a tradition that goes back 5 generations, and that is that the oldest of the family joins the military, only the 4 main branches. My mom was in the Army and retired as a major. My grandpa was in the Air Force and retired as a colonel. I believe my great-grandpa was in the Navy, and my great-great-grandfather was a Marine, and my great-3X-grandfather was also Marine. My family is very proud of this fact and has been throwing this in my face since I was first born. With the school year coming to an end and I turned 18 last month, my mom has been forcing me to do fitness courses and buying textbooks to help me study for the ASVAB. Now, I would have rebelled against this a while ago, but sadly my younger brother passed away a few years ago and it was really hard on my parents. So I've just been going along with this until now. Last week, I overheard my mom talking on the phone to a recruiter talking about my options for possibly becoming an officer. I guess the realization finally hit. I told my mom that I am not joining a few days ago and a huge fight happened. But basically, I quote, wasted her time, and she called me a disappointment. But I think that I have a right to choose whether or not I join the military. So am I the jerk for not carrying on my family's tradition? The sibling passing away a few years ago is very sad, but that should not be used as a tool to coerce the OP into doing what the parents want the OP to do, especially with something like this, where it's the start of your adult life and you have to go out into the world and you're going to do it based on someone else's decision. I mean, there are family traditions that don't require you to change the trajectory of your entire life, and that's what this is kind of doing. I mean, you're kind of being sent off towards the military, which will change the whole trajectory of everything. And there are a lot of people who would really thrive and would love that start to their adult life, but the OP is clearly not one of them. So the real options are either begrudgingly do something you don't want to do and be stuck with that forever, or be abundantly clear like the OP has just begun to do and say, I'm not doing this, I want to do this other thing instead, or I just don't want to do this in general. If you end up being unhappy later on in life because of something like this, no one else can save you from that or undo that. So if you were in this situation, how would you handle it, a jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for selling my late husband's home out from under his parents? Last year, my husband died in a car accident. We were separated for about a year prior, but not officially divorced. So I was named the administrator of his estate. I have my own home and I'm financially independent. We had 2 children together, and in the late summer of last year, I learned that his parents were the beneficiaries and received a boatload of money. Since his death, his parents have told me that they wanted to buy the home. I have been waiting for them to go through with the purchase since August. I have been paying the mortgage on this home ever since. In February, I warned them that I was sick of paying for 2 mortgages and that I needed them to go through with the purchase. They have dragged their feet ever since and told me that it was in their lawyer's hands and they had no control. My lawyer has not received any kind of formal offer from them, other than their lawyer stating that they were interested. Last week, I was approached by a gentleman willing to pay good money for the home. I warned them, hoping it would make them move forward on their end, but they scoffed and told me that I just needed to be patient and wait. It has been an entire year of waiting, of them letting me pay the mortgage on his home and support our children while they go on vacations, make larger purchases and pay off their debt with the life insurance. Am I the jerk for accepting an offer from someone that isn't them? Is selling the home of their dead son wrong? How can you expect someone, anyone, regardless if they're financially stable or not, to pay a second mortgage on a house that they're not even renting out? I think that the OP maybe would have rented this out if she would have known that it was going to be an entire year and still not have a formal offer from them. There's no way to predict that something like this would happen, but in retrospect, she probably could have said, yes, you can reserve the right to buy it for this price if you pay the mortgage until you buy the house. Paying one mortgage is hard enough. Paying two mortgages can eat you alive. That's so much money wasted for an empty house that's just sitting there waiting to be bought. In other words, they wanted to do it at their convenience at the OP's expense, and that is wrong. But if this was you, how would you have handled the situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for ignoring my mom asking me to get involved with her new family after I got rich? Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My mom left my dad when I was 17 years old. I'm now 29, and had a new boyfriend literally straight away. We all suspected that she was cheating with this dude beforehand, but there was never any proof, and she, even to this day, refuses to admit it. She had 2 more kids with this guy. When my mom and dad broke up, I moved out to live with my dad, who had moved back in with his parents. The major reason for this was because she told me to leave as I kept fighting with her new dude. I really did not want to deal with the new guy in my mom's life, and I was really upset that she didn't give a care about how much pain my dad was in. When she told me to leave, something in me changed, and I am still unable to forgive her. That solidified because my 14-year-old sister stayed with my mom for a year and then begged to come live with my dad because she hated it so much in my mom's place. And my sister and my mom were close. So for my sister to feel that way, it must have been bad. Since I was 18 years old, my grandparents kept pushing me to start a business because I like to tinker around, and I had built a few specialized tools for a niche construction industry that my dad was in, and they saw potential in me. They gave me a lot of money as an investment. Actually, they remortgaged their house. That's how much they believed in me. And basically, I majorly lucked out and managed to land some national contracts at 24 years old that turned into more than a few $1 million worth over a few months when the business boomed. The profit trajectory has risen since then, and basically, I'm living a life I never thought that I would have. I am rich. I moved my dad, my sister, and my grandparents out to the East Coast a couple of years back, and we've started a new life. I'm surrounded by people who see and saw the best in me, and I'm grateful for so much because I was seriously messed up after my mom split our family apart. For the last couple of years or so, my mom has been on my case to reunite with her. She gets increasingly more insistent that I go visit her and her boyfriend and kids, and keeps trying to guilt me because my sister has a much more privileged life now, and my younger 2 half-siblings don't. She keeps telling me that even if I don't forgive her, I should look out for the kids as they're innocent in all of this. So am I the jerk because day to day I have no interest in helping out her or her new family? In my opinion, she made her bed so she can lay in it, but the guilt eats me alive sometimes. I just can't forgive her. Am I the jerk for ignoring my mom asking me to get involved with her new family after I got rich? There were some interesting comments that the OP responded to, one of which quoted the part that said, for the last couple of years or so, my mom has been on my case to reunite with her. The comment said, your mom had no interest in a relationship with you until it would benefit her and her new family. If you want to set your half-siblings up with a college fund that your mom can't touch, go for it. If not, don't feel guilty about it. Your mom has made this mess and you have no obligation to her. You have no reason to feel guilty for your success. But the OP responded back not with trying to fix the guilt of setting up her half-siblings, but instead said this, yeah, I keep reminding myself of this, but in a weird way, I feel like I want to earn her love back. I know she made her choices when I was a kid, but I do feel like maybe if I could slowly re-get in contact with her, she'll magically make up for when I was 12. But I also know that's not really reality. That to me sounds like a recipe for mass disappointment. Even if somehow the OP was able to directly communicate what that desire was to her mom and her mom heard and understood that, I have a feeling that would just turn out to be some weird transactional thing where the mom says, yeah, honey, I love you. About that money though. And the concept of having to re-earn the mother's love when the OP didn't even do anything wrong in the first place is just sad. I mean, even if she did do something to lose the affection of the mom, that's still sad, but in this case, it's even worse. One other question somebody asked was, out of curiosity, is she just as intent on trying to repair the relationship with your sister, who is not rich? And the OP said, she's also reached out to my sister too. My sister absolutely hasn't responded and has no interest in talking to my mom ever again. She really felt abandoned by her. I don't know if you can ever really undo the feeling of being abandoned. I mean, once you are abandoned, you are abandoned. For the rest of time, a lot of people will just constantly be waiting for the next time that they do get abandoned with that person. And sometimes that even bleeds over into relationships with other people because how much it hurt to be abandoned by the person they cared about so much, in this case, their mother. So if you were in this situation, how would you handle it? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for kicking my friend out of my bedroom so my wife could take a nap? I am a 28-year-old male and I have a 27-year-old wife who works full-time as a CNA while she's in school to become an autopsy technician. She works a lot. She is constantly picking up extra shifts, working doubles and even triples. She does all of that on top of going to school full-time. Because of that, she often takes a nap after work. Well, yesterday, I had a friend over who I will call E, and my wife and E do not get along as E makes her uncomfortable, but she and I don't prevent one another from seeing friends just because one of us doesn't like the other's friend. So, E was over at my and my wife's house playing video games when my wife calls to tell me she's on her way home from work. She sounds exhausted, and I asked her if she felt okay to drive, and if not, I'd come pick her up from work and go back together to get the car later. She said that she's fine to drive and that she'll be seeing me later. I said okay. I told her I loved her. E and I go back to playing video games. Is it worth mentioning that the only TV my wife and I have is in our bedroom? I was laying on the bed playing, and E was sitting in my desk chair. About 15 minutes or so later, I hear my wife come in the house and call out to me to let me know that she was home. I come into the living room and give her a kiss. She all but collapses into my arms, exhausted to the point that she couldn't even walk to the bedroom. I ask her if she's okay, and she says, yeah, it's just a long day at work. I really need a nap. I nodded and told her to come lay down in bed. When we get to the bedroom, I politely tell E that he needed to leave as my wife was exhausted and we could play later that night. E asks why he needs to leave and why my wife just can't sleep while he and I keep playing. I explained that it was just a game and that my wife and her needs came first. E then asked why can't my wife just sleep on the couch? I told him I wasn't making her sleep on the sofa because he wanted to keep playing games. E gets pissed. He slams his controller on the dresser and goes to leave. But before he does, he turns to my wife and tells her,
well, I'll bet you're happy he always feels like he has to pick you over everyone else.
He leaves and slams the door on the way out. My wife turns to me and starts apologizing, saying she just could have slept on the couch. I tell her no, she couldn't have, and I tell her to get some rest. Later that night, my other friends are blowing up my phone, saying things along the lines of bros before girls and saying that it was rude to kick E out just so my wife could sleep. All of my married friends, however, are on my side, saying my wife's needs come first before my friends. E is now saying that he won't speak to me unless I apologize. So, am I the jerk for kicking my friend out of my bedroom so my wife could sleep? It seems pretty ridiculous that the friend would be that upset when the wife is literally about to fall over. She can't even stand from what it sounds like. But what that really says is there's some sort of resentment that's been building inside of E for a long time about the relationship that he has seen, observed, and felt between the OP and his wife, and maybe it has made him feel excluded. Maybe before the OP was married, he was spending more time with E, and E resents the fact that he's prioritizing his wife over E playing video games in their room. The reason I say that is because you wouldn't really just blow up like that if you were denied video games casually and it was just the first time this has ever happened. The part that is odd to me though is why wouldn't E just say, hey, yeah, let's let her sleep in here and let's go do something else? Because if it wasn't really about the video games, if it was just about hanging out, they could have hung out somewhere else that wasn't the bedroom, unless it was implied that, I guess, the OP was going to stay with the wife in the bedroom. But either way, no matter how you slice it, it seems like this has been on E's mind for a while, and this moment was kind of just a catalyst to let it explode and say how he really felt. But let me know what you would do if you're in this situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for how I reacted when my husband threw away our daughter's kitchen tools that I bought her? My daughter Liz is 15 and she loves cooking. She began discovering new meals after she became vegan. She was a very picky eater in the past. I encouraged her to cook her own food, but my husband hates it, although she still sits at the table with us, but he thinks that her having different food on the table is disrespectful to the family and she should just be eating what we eat. I thought that was ridiculous and asked him just to let her be. He got more agitated and said that Liz wasn't allowed to use any tools in our kitchen if she decides to cook for herself, since he paid for everything the kitchen has. I fought back on this decision, but he stood firm. I decided to just go out and buy her all the tools she needed to make her meals. She buys her own groceries, so I don't have to worry about that. Last night I was out and Liz called me crying, saying that my husband husband threw away all the tools that I got her to prevent her from cooking. I was fuming. I went home and started arguing with him, telling him those weren't his tools. He argued that Liz was cooking in his kitchen and that he already didn't authorize that. I blew up and went off on him, telling him that that's ridiculous and he was just looking for excuses to prevent Liz from cooking. He yelled that Liz is acting like a spoiled brat and that I repeatedly let her disrespect us and table manners by letting her cook her own food instead of being grateful and eating what's already on the table. We fought some more, then I went upstairs. He followed me saying I'm avoiding responsibility and that I'm encouraging Liz to become selfish and egotistical instead of appreciating what's in front of her. I refused to talk to him, and he said I should apologize for reacting by yelling at him and calling him names. So to answer a few questions, why let my daughter buy her own groceries? 2 reasons. 1 is that she uses the money I give her to buy groceries, and 2 is that she knows what she needs to cook meals and has more knowledge with vegan products, so she shops by herself and sometimes I take her with me if it's a new place. And number 2, is there a cultural factor? We're from Latin America and my husband is the sole provider for my family. Number 3, why can't the whole family eat vegan? Because I have younger kids and they don't eat vegetables. So am I the jerk for how I reacted when my husband threw away our daughter's kitchen tools that I bought her? I can't understand why in certain families it ends up being like this sometimes, where they hate one member of the family being vegan, vegetarian, or whatever so much that they try and squash it out in any way that they can, including situations like this where the person is entirely self-sufficient. I mean, the daughter is not a financial strain, it sounds like. The daughter is not getting in the way. She's still respectful by sitting and eating at the dinner table with them. It just seems weird to care that much that you would go and throw away tools. I mean, that's more of a financial waste than anything else. One of the top responses says, honestly, I'd make that man regret his words. If he's demanding you eat all the same food, then I'd go out and buy all vegan food. Make him adapt to his daughter's diet, and maybe after a few meatless nights, he'll realize that he prefers letting her cook her own food. She's 15. That is valuable and an essential life skill he's preventing her from developing. Why is he so jealous of her eating vegan food? I'd completely stop buying animal products and fill the fridge and cabinets with all vegan options that my daughter would eat and then start cooking that food for him. Now the whole family can eat together as one and he can stop complaining. Malicious compliance is absolutely called for here. I have a feeling that that situation would turn into a much bigger fight, but let me know what you think down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay for my father's medical bills? I'm a 29-year-old female. My parents divorced when I was about 10 years old, and I have no contact with my father after a year because he made the choice to prioritize his new family. His stepson, who's 33, and eventually his children with new wife, over my brother and I. No visitation after he got remarried at all. When we called to ask when he was going to visit us, he would just say that he was busy. Before the divorce, I was literally daddy's little girl, his beloved golden child. No joke. I thought my father was the best and I wanted to marry a man like him when I grew up. So the fact that he just dropped my brother and me off has caused this deep-seated wound in my heart, which I will never forgive him for causing. He never paid child support, so my mother had to support my brother and I as a single parent. She decided not to take him to court as she never wanted anything to do with him again. Parents had 50-50 custody. However, 18 years is a long time, and thanks to my mother's love and care for us, I have already forgotten about him and moved on with my life. Same goes for my brother. We have both grown up to live comfortably in our lives, take care of our mother, and love her to no end. The story is that this morning, his stepson, the 33-year-old one, contacted me via Facebook and said he wanted to talk to me regarding our father. And I was confused at first and then remembered that, yes, I had someone like that in my life. He told me that our father has a medical condition and treatment costs a lot of money. He sent together with screenshots of medical reports, and that it would be nice if we could pay his bills, and also that my father wanted to speak to my brother and I. I told him that man lost the rights to be my father when he decided not to have any contact with us, and also that his father's medical bills are none of my concern. So, as his children, you shouldn't go around harassing random people for money. Also, all those years of unpaid child support could be used to cover his medical expenses, after which he called me a vengeful, heartless bee, to which I just replied with a smiling emoji and blocked him. I talked to my mom about this, and she said while I have the right to be angry with him, he is still my father and is unwell, so I could help them out a bit. I told her no way in hell am I going to pay for his bills? He has his children to pay for it, so let them settle it. He made his bed, now let him sleep in it. Was I the jerk here? So the father didn't reach out to the OP himself? He sent the stepson to do this? I mean, he's either that sick in this whole medical situation that he couldn't reach out himself, or he just couldn't face the OP and had to have someone go in his place to ask for money with these screenshots of the bills and everything. If that's the case, that seems like a very cowardly way to go about it. There was actually an update the OP did in response with a few more clarifications saying, I have never acknowledged him as my stepbrother because my father went no contact after being together with his new wife. Regardless, your father found out and discarded you, and as far as you know, has never made any attempt to see you or talk to you in 18 years. And the response from the OP was, actually he didn't, but I did contact him to invite him for my 21st birthday party, which in my country is a milestone. Just that small little hope that he would actually be there that one time. Just once I wanted him to be there. He told me that it was his daughter's 9th birthday on the same weekend, so we needed to be with her instead. My heart shattered into a trillion pieces. I decided then that even if this man died, I would not attend his funeral, and also hope that he would suffer the worst punishment in hell. In response to the question of, on a separate note, your mother is a bit of a jerk for not pursuing child support. It's not for her, it's for you and your brother, and she wants you to contribute. Nope, she wanted nothing to do with him. Wouldn't even let any of his money go to supporting your upbringing so you can do the same. The OP said, my mother did not want to face him at all because of the physical and mental toll that he took on her, and she faced that when she was married to that man. It happened right in front of my eyes, but I chose to ignore it as I was daddy's little girl. He always treated me like a princess, lots of love and pampering. So I believed that he could do no wrong and that she deserved it, which is why I totally understand why she didn't want anything to do with him. I still feel extremely bad for ignoring her pain like that and will continue to feel bad for the rest of my life. Besides, her parents are well off and they supported her without any qualms, so money was never an issue for us. The most important thing that I see here is that the OP should decide if she wants to do this or not herself, without the influence of her mother saying that she should do this or should do that. That doesn't matter. What matters is if the OP wants to do it on her own or not. But if it was you, what would you do in this situation? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for refusing to take my sister and her kids in unless her husband stays out? Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to turn on notifications. I'm a 32-year-old male and my father passed away 2 years ago. He left me and my half-sister, we both have different moms, same dad, inheritance that we equally split between me and her. My sister spent her inheritance money in just a few months. She is a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids and always had financial hardship. I haven't touched my inheritance money. I live in an apartment that I inherited from my biological mom in 2016. My sister sat me down to talk about her and her husband's current situation. She said her husband can no longer pay rent and they needed a place to stay. I asked for time to think since me and her husband don't get along. She said that was okay. The next day she showed up with her tone completely changed. She said her husband thinks I'm being manipulative by taking time to think about letting them come, and that my apartment is an inheritance and she is my sister, therefore I should share it with her and the kids. She said her husband also says that if I wasn't going to let my sister share the apartment, then I should give her half of my dad's inheritance, saying it's not fair since my sister doesn't work, has 2 kids, and is now homeless, while I have a paying job, no kids, and a whole apartment to myself. I was speechless. I opened the argument by saying the apartment was from mom and mom never related to my half-sister, so she has no right to her inheritance. Also, she already had half of dad's inheritance, so she can't touch mine just because her husband thinks so. When she started crying, telling me to think about my nephews, again parroted her husband's words, saying I have 2 options. I either let them move in or give them support money from my inheritance. I said she and the kids can move in, but her husband? No. He is banned from my place. She pitched a fit, saying I can't believe I wanted to keep the kids' father away from them, and I'm the reason they'll be homeless for refusing. But I flipped out and said that I'm not the reason. It's her deadbeat husband that she keeps repeating his nasty words instead of holding him accountable for the terrible situation that they're in. I told her I will not continue to speak to her since her husband speaks for her. She left after the blow up. Days later, I discussed discussed this with my stepmom, and she said she couldn't believe that I cut contact with my sister only for asking for help, and that I needed to see her soon and arrange for one of the two options to be considered, reminding me that innocent kids are involved, and even if my brother-in-law can be rude to me, I should do it. But I'm standing my ground on letting him into my place after what he said. For some more information, my sister is younger than me. She's 26 years old. Her kids are 2 to 5 years old. I love my sister. I have a good relationship with her and the kids and stepmom for years. I don't want to ruin it now. And because I see this question being asked, my stepmom is now living with her family, and brother-in-law has been in no contact with them, so it's unlikely to let them move with them. And also, I love my sister and nephew so much. I treat my nephews as my own kids, and I did help in the past because I know my sister and my nephews are struggling. However, I'm quite upset because of how she talked to me, but I know that it was her husband who was talking to me that day and not her, since she kept repeating his words. So, with all that said, am I the jerk? Coming from the OP's perspective, one of the most frustrating things in an argument that can happen is somebody parroting somebody else's words, and you can tell that it's obviously happening, but they won't acknowledge it. I've been in situations like that a few times, and in some of those situations, the person who's parroting the words sometimes doesn't even realize that they're saying words that are not even their own. They're just repeating things that they heard, not critically thinking about the situation on their own and presenting their own thoughts. There's a difference between loyalty to your husband and just turning off your brain and saying the words that you've already heard said to you. It's hard to say which one that is in this case, but it seems like the OP seems to think it's the latter. I also get the frustration that the OP has by trying to shift the blame on the OP for not letting everyone stay at the apartment when not even acknowledging the reason for being in the situation in the first place. Obviously, there are situations where hardships happen to people and it has nothing to do with their decisions, it just happens to them. But the OP seems to be implying that this is not one of those situations. Specifically, the line where the OP says it's because of her deadbeat husband and her not holding him accountable for the terrible situation that they're in. So that one line says a lot about how the OP sees the situation that they got into. So if you were in this situation and you had a sibling that had a spouse that you couldn't stand and they wanted to stay at your place, what would you do, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? A farmer leases land from a landowner. The landowner has the farmer do all the hard work of getting the soil ready and having a crop coming, and right before the harvest season tells the farmer he can't renew his lease. The reason being is because the landowner wanted the $1.5 million revenue for himself, even though it was the farmer that did all the work. So here's what happened. Let me preface this by noting that this revenge was not my doing, at least not exactly. It happened back in the 90s when I was in high school and centered around the type of school that I attended. So in case you weren't aware, it's very common in agricultural communities to have what are known as farmer schools. That's not a technical term, but more just something easy to define them. The schools are generally organized by the local farmers, and while you still study the various courses needed to get into college, you also study farming technology courses and get the credit hours for work study, i.e. working on one or more farms. The area I lived in was surrounded by a large number of farms which grew cotton primarily. So during the year, we would spend time out in the field both tilling, planting, and harvesting. One of the farms near the school was this 1,000-acre spread that, like the others, grew mostly cotton. Although sometimes they rotated to soybeans and silage, which is basically corn, but you don't have to harvest it. This farm had a long partnership with the schools, so the students provided near free labor for the farmer. The farmer leased this property from some out-of-state owner and paid them a portion of the revenue from the harvest. Imagine my surprise when I and many of the classmates arrived at the farm to do our work study, and the farmer instructed some to crew the sprayers and start spraying herbicide on the fields, while others, myself included, were to take tractors and discs and plow everything under. The farmer wanted every square inch of the fields returned to just dirt. We were shocked, to say the least, but after some discussion, we set to work. It took us the better part of a weekend to do so, and when we were done, the field was in a beautiful, if barren, state. The farmer thanked each of us personally and paid us about $500 each. This was quite the sum for a 90s high school student. We returned to the school, told our headmaster that the contract was completed, and he informed us that the farmer would no longer be working with the school and would be sent to one of the other larger farms for the rest of the year and our work study. It was probably 2 or 3 months later before word started going around about why we'd been instructed to destroy the crop. Granted, these were just rumors, but based on how things turned out for the farmer, I suspect there's some truth to it. So apparently the landowner had decided that he was going going to not renew the lease the farmer had on the land. This lease renewal just so happened to fall a few weeks before the harvest season would start. Given that the average cotton farmer earns about $1,500 per acre, a 1,000 acre farm would easily net the owner $1.5 million, about $500,000 of that being pure profit. I don't know what the farmer's lease was, but it stands to reason that he wasn't anywhere near that. So this landowner had figured out a neat little trick. Let the farmer get a good crop planted, then refuse to renew the lease. The farmer would just leave the plants in the field and the landowner would just need to pay some contractors to come harvest it and they'd earn a profit. Since at the time the farmer's lease wasn't up yet, he decided to prevent that from happening. His act of revenge against the owner was to prevent them from cashing in on their hard work. Sure, it destroyed his farm and he had to sell off most everything he owned to buy some property for himself, but he proved a point. The owner tried to sue the farmer, though he, the owner, really didn't have a leg to stand on, or so I was told. I think the court ruled that since the farmer was still under the lease when he had the land tilled under, then it was his property to do with as he wished, and thus the landowner couldn't tell him what to do with his property. I learned a rather valuable lesson from that man, beyond what I even learned about farming. The lesson was never, ever cross someone with nothing to lose. One last piece of information about the actual crop. Cotton is one of the few crops which leaves a negative nutrient value in the soil, meaning that after the harvest, even if you till the dead plants under, or even if you till them prior to the harvest, you won't have as many nutrients as you started with. That's why farmers will plant another crop, usually winter wheat, in place and then till under rather than harvesting it. This is something called green manure, but it works to put nutrients that the cotton pulled out of the soil back into it. While the ground wouldn't have been completely dead or sterile, any crop planted on that tract of land without further treatment of the soil wouldn't have produced the same acre per acre yield that a comparable crop would have had he gone to harvest and planted the secondary crop, which meant that the landowner would either have to plant the green manure and spend money that way or pay by the ton to use artificial fertilizer. So, was he the jerk for doing this to the land? What the landowner tried to do to the farmer was dirty. He basically tried to get a year's worth of free labor leading up to the harvest in order to extract the full $1.5 million or $500,000 profit without doing the backbreaking work that I'm sure it takes in order to pull off this entire operation. In the end, I'm glad that the farmer was able to get his own land, but man, he really backed this farmer up against the wall and tried to pull one over on him in such a dirty way. If he just would have let the farmer renew the lease until the harvest season was over, then maybe he could have got the land back in an acceptable form that wasn't totally drained of all of its nutrients and destroyed. But because he wanted that for himself without having to do any of the work and wanted the immediate gratification of getting the lease paid up to that point and then the harvest, the greed was just way too high. So if you were in this situation, let me know what you would do, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my parents even if they end up homeless with serious medical conditions? I'm a 28-year-old female and I was raised by super religious parents. It was a fight to be able to go to a normal college and not a Christian one with weird rules. When I did that, they said they will not be paying for my schooling until I, quote, come back to the right path. After struggling for a couple of months, a friend told me that the strip club she was working at was hiring. I have been dancing my whole life and I have a good figure, so I was hired pretty fast. A few months in, I dropped out of college because I was making serious money. I was making about $3,000 a week on a bad week and up to $11,000 a week on a good week. When my parents found out, they disowned me. The same goes for all of my extended family except for 2 cousins. Fast forward 9 years, I own my house outright. I own a Tesla. I don't have debt. I also own an apartment building that I rent. Stripping has a short lifespan and other investments. Now my parents contacted me. Apparently, my father lost his business during COVID. My mom has always been a stay-at-home mom and they declared bankruptcy and they are struggling. They live in an old camper. Also, my mom is diabetic now and my dad has always had heart problems and they want my help. I said no, I don't have parents anymore. And furthermore, according to their religion and church, my money was earned while sinning. So to use it is to damn your soul to hell. And I don't really want to do that for them. My mom started crying and my dad said they didn't know where they went wrong with me. That was the last of it from them. A couple of aunts and uncles called me, but changed their family helps family tune very fast when I asked why weren't they themselves helping. But now, a couple of weeks later, I'm starting to feel like I was the jerk to them because a month's income from stripping would make a really big change for them, but I wouldn't even miss it that bad. So, am I the jerk for refusing to help my parents even though they might end up homeless with serious medical conditions? In some cases, people can go by and not help and they won't feel anything, but it sounds like the OP is already starting to have that little feeling eat at her because she's starting to feel like the jerk now. And in a lot of situations, when people are desperate enough, they will overlook some of their previous principles that they stuck by. So just because this money was made by sinning and that was unacceptable before, now it's probably serious enough of a situation that they just need the help regardless of where the money came from. Sometimes people call this blood money if it comes from hurting people, or in this case, I'm sure they look at it as sinner's money. One piece of one of the responses to this says that under their belief system, you are now an evil, sinning child who is making money in a terrible way, and your refusal to help them only confirms their opinion of you, which is fine. It really doesn't matter what they think, but if you still feel bad and you want to mess with their heads, help them and ask them to reconcile the fact that you are the fallen one, but you had more compassion for them in their time of need than they, the God-fearing saints, had for you and yours. Or don't, but feel good about it. Either way, you don't deserve guilting yourself over them. And the money, if you think about it, is more indirectly coming from this sinner origin because I'm guessing the majority of her money is coming from the rental apartment building that she has, which probably was originally paid for by that money, but now it's kind of changed hands over time. I assume that she's not dancing anymore because she says something about it being a short lifespan on it. But let me know what you do if you're in this situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for leaving the hospital after my husband called for his mom instead of me? My husband is 31 years old and he was in the hospital for a surgery that involved anesthesia. His mom came to wait with me there, but didn't speak to me because we have been having some minor disagreements. She offered me coffee, but I declined politely. Hours after the surgery, we were told only one person goes into the room for the day since he was still under anesthesia. From what I understand, he woke up calling for his mom. The nurse asked for his mom to go in and she did. I was irritated and felt like all this waiting and stressing out was happening, but I got ignored. The nurse told me that he was still not fully awake and was repeatedly calling for his mom, spontaneously. She was basically hinting that I shouldn't get worked up over a natural reaction from my husband, but I couldn't help but feel irked. I wanted to go home, so I left after 10 minutes. His mom called saying she just got out of the room after I left so I could get time with him, but instead, I couldn't wait and I went home. She said that this was not okay and that I flew off the handle for no reason. I said that her son acted like I wasn't there, but she said that he cannot be blamed for something he can't control, and I'm just being unfair to him and putting blame on him because of a disagreement between her and I. I cut the conversation short after I sensed that she somehow blamed me for being unacknowledged and ignored. Her husband texted later saying that I'm being hostile over nothing and that I should focus on my husband's health instead of acting petty, but I don't think I did anything that qualifies as petty. So, am I the jerk for leaving the hospital after my husband called for his mom instead of me? The guy was coming out of anesthesia. He's probably in a total fog state of mind. The OP seems like she's holding her husband totally accountable for just coming out of surgery and not being able to think 100% clearly. I mean, the guy could probably think, I'm guessing. The nurse even took it upon herself to explain that to the OP, and then she had an opportunity to see her husband, but she got mad and left because the mom saw him first. That seems like the OP is more concerned about her discomfort of having to wait than the husband having the surgery. One of the responses said, "When my grandmother was in the hospital, she started asking for her mother who had been dead for 40 years. Anesthesia and painkillers do odd things to your brain." I mean, that could be the case, or he just wanted to see his mom, which is not a crime. So let me know what you would do if you're in this situation down below. Jerk or not a jerk, and why.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.